Chapter 171. Lu Xiling, Shirtun secretly said in his heart, and a murderous intent emerged. He secretly made up his mind that the next time he met him, he would never let him leave alive. He could see that a person like Lu Xiling was definitely a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Moreover, he liked to sow discord the most. If he returned to the profound Heartsword sect and found some elders to say a few words, he might have one more sect as an enemy. This would put considerable pressure on his current situation or on the Southern Barbarian Demon Tribe. The top sect was a colossus. It was far from what the Southern Barbarian Demon Tribe, which had not yet been fully developed, could resist. They might even be crushed into pieces. What's more, Shirtun still had a great enemy in front of him, the Thousand Beasts sect, which was also a great sect that was definitely not inferior to the profound Heartsword sect. These were all incomparably heavy mountains, which were far from what Shirtun could match. Accumulate strength. I must accumulate strength as soon as possible. This time, I must find a way to enter the Qin family. Shirtun's eyes flashed, and countless thoughts flashed through his mind. A pressing pressure came head-on. What he lacked was time. He really lacked time. If there was a divine tool in this world that could speed up time many times in the outside world, he sincerely hoped that he could enter it and cultivate for hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of years. At that time, he would come out and sweep everything. Unfortunately, this was just a beautiful wish, just a beautiful fantasy. In reality, there was no such thing. Even if there was, it was definitely not something he could enter and obtain. The arrival of Elder Xiao unexpectedly ended the trip to the Qin domain. However, no one had any objections, because even if Lu Qin was really in the maze, no one dared to set foot in it. The Nine Circles maze was really too terrifying, and too disgusting. Once you entered, you would not be able to control your own life and death. Therefore, no one would be willing to enter the maze if they continued to stay. Leaving now was actually the best outcome. In any case, each of them had obtained a lot of artifact embryos. Any one of these artifact embryos was something that people in the immortal cultivation world would fight for, who would give up on benefits and throw away their lives. Naturally, all of them were incomparably obedient. Following behind Elder Xiao, they came to a door of illusions with ease. This door of illusions had already been activated. As long as they entered it, they would be able to leave the Guqin realm. Those who had experienced it before did not need anyone to guide them. One by one, they entered the door of illusions. In the twinkling of an eye, they left the Guqin realm. In front of the spell altar outside the Zither realm, the Qin family head, Qin Xian, Katomi, and the others all stared at the spell altar as if they wanted to see some strange reaction. One cultivator after another walked out of the gate. The spell altar was still the same. There was no change at all. Qin Xian could not help but reveal a trace of disappointment in his eyes. Suddenly, an elegant young man in white clothes walked out. A white light suddenly shot out from the altar, and behind the white light, a yellow light appeared. The yellow and white light intertwined and flickered on the altar. It lasted for a few breaths, and then mysteriously retracted back. Two-colored light. It seems that Xue Wuhan of the Water Moon Paradise obtained a magic treasure embryo. But it's not the Lu Qin. If it was the Lu Qin, the altar would have sensed it and released a seven-colored light. Qin Xian's eyes narrowed when he saw the light on the altar. Then, he sighed with disappointment and shook his head. He did not say much. It turned out that this altar was not only the place to open the illusionary void door, but also to check what kind of tool embryo the person brought out. The two colored lights just now indicated that a tool embryo of the magic treasure level had been taken out. This kind of tool embryo of the magic treasure level was indeed very precious. As long as one refined it slightly, they could obtain a precious magic treasure. However, compared to the Lu Qin, it paled in comparison. It was not worth mentioning. After Xue Wuhan, the altar trembled again, and two more rays of light shot out. At this time, the one standing on the altar was Sakura. Seeing the rays of light shooting in all directions, The purple drum in his storage pouch suddenly trembled, as if it was resonating with the altar. It was very strange, and his body tensed up. He didn't expect that the Qin family would have such a brilliant method. No wonder they were not afraid of others finding the Lu Qi Qin. They could even trigger things in their storage space. This method was very shocking. His heart couldn't help but tighten. What a powerful altar! Will the LV zither that was sucked into my king pattern purple pool be discovered? If it is discovered, I will be in big trouble. Fortunately, the altar did not seem to be able to sense the space in the royal pattern. It only released a two-colored light, indicating that a magic treasure embryo had been brought out. Sakura also walked down the altar steadily and stood together with the other cultivators who came out. It's just that the sadness and indifference on his body made him stand out from the crowd all along, which was especially eye-catching. No, not yet. Qin Xian looked at the people who had come out and shook his head again and again. When the last person came out, the altar still did not reveal any trace of the Lu Qi Qin. He knew that he would not be able to bring the Qin out this time. Sighing was one thing. Now that everyone in the Zither realm had come out, he naturally had to stand up and say a few words. He gestured to Katomi beside him, and they walked up the altar together. Then, he looked at the 100 or so people who had come out. He raised his voice and said, "Everyone was able to survive and come out safely in the Zither realm. It is clear that each of you will have limitless achievements in the future. When we entered, there were thousands of elites. Now, only 100 or so have come out. Although I've always emphasized that the Zither realm is very dangerous, there's nothing I can do about those who have died in there." Then, a trace of sadness flashed across his face. Most of the cultivators below looked relieved, and there was a hint of lingering fear on their faces. Clearly, they remembered their experience in the Zither realm. If they were given a choice, perhaps very few people would choose to enter the Zither realm again. However, the Zither realm is open to everyone this time to choose a husband for my daughter. The criteria for choosing a husband is to bring out the Lu Qi Qin. The altar just now showed that everyone did not bring out the Lu Qi Qin. Therefore, in this marriage, I can only say that the fate between you and my daughter Katomi has not come yet. Clearly, Qin Xian's words now had the intention of chasing the guests away. Smack! At this time, in an area covered by blood-red clouds, there were 3 towering peaks in a row. They were arranged in a triangle and formed a hidden array. On the peaks, there were many towering palaces from the waist up. There was no telling how many there were. In the center of these 3 peaks, there was a mountain that was much shorter than the other 3 peaks. There were more houses and palaces on the mountain, and they were even more majestic. Under the cover of the blood clouds that did not disperse, this area seemed to be filled with an evil aura that caused one's heart to turn cold. In the highest palace, a middle-aged man dressed in blood-red robes, who looked very similar to Shuaini, had a ferocious expression on his face. He kept twitching, and with one hand, he tore off a large piece of the chair he was sitting on. One must know that this chair was made of dark gold meteoric iron, which was incomparably hard. It was obvious how much strength this person used to tear off such a hard object. An incomparably beautiful woman sat next to him, silently weeping and crying. Husband, Eni was destroyed this time, and only a strand of her soul managed to escape. I don't know when she'll be able to reconstruct her body. We have to take revenge for this. I'll cut the person who injured E into 1,000 pieces. Otherwise, how can I get rid of the pain in my heart? The beautiful woman's expression was incomparably fierce, and the words she spat out were even more unique. It could be said that it was directly proportional to her appearance. Investigate. We must find out who dared to touch the son of Shui Wutian. As long as we find out who it is, I'll capture him and send him to the blood prison. I'll let him have a taste of what it means to wish he was dead. I will let him suffer endless torture every day. The blood demon said coldly. Traces of blood-red light flickered in his eyes. Oomph. This time he went out completely because of the Qin family's matchmaking event. Otherwise, my son wouldn't have become like this today. All of this is related to the Qin family. No matter who did this to my son, the Qin family won't let them off so easily." The beautiful woman viciously shouted again. Her face was full of hatred. "The Qin family?" The blood demon suddenly hesitated and said in a deep voice, "Although the Qin family is related, they cannot be touched for the time being. The Qin family is too mysterious. They have always been known for their sound attacks. Their sound attacks are mysterious and hard to defend against. If we really face them, our blood cloud sect may not be able to do anything to them." His words were filled with fear towards the Qin family. Even at this time, he had not made up his mind to completely fall out with them. This matter needs to be considered at length. It's just that Yin Yi's soul is not complete. Using the soul summoning technique will take too long, and his mind is not clear. We have no idea who beat him up like this. The only thing we can do now is to find out who is participating in the Qin family's matchmaking event. Once we find out who did this, I will not let them go. The blood demon took a deep breath and let out an evil roar. These two people were none other than the Blood Cloud sect's sect master and his wife. Shui was their only son. Under the protection of the divine treasury jade, Shui soul had instinctively returned to the Blood Cloud sect. However, at that time, Dishurtian's mournful cry was too powerful. Although his soul had escaped, it was not complete. He had lost a part of it. Now, his mind was not clear. Otherwise, he would have known about Dishurtian's existence. The new July is here. I'm begging for everyone's guaranteed monthly votes. Help me make another push. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com to read more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 172. Wan Tao, quickly come and see me. After the blood demon roared, he was still the master of his sect. After taking a few deep breaths, he raised his head and transmitted his voice to the outside. However, his face was still terrifyingly gloomy. It was as if his body contained a huge volcano that could explode at any time. Pata! Following the sound of hurried footsteps, a middle-aged man in black clothes quickly walked into the hall. When he saw Shui Mo and the beautiful woman, he immediately revealed a respectful expression. He bowed and said, "Disciple Wan Tao greets Master and Master's wife. May I know if Master has something important to instruct this disciple to come here?" He lowered his head, not daring to look around wantonly. In his lowered eyes, a trace of cold light faintly flashed. However, when he raised his head, the cold light had already disappeared. It was replaced by a respectful look. The change was so quick that it could be said to be unparalleled. "Tao, this time, your junior brother Yin Yi died in the Qin family's groom search and returned with only a remnant soul. The culprit must be a group of people who entered the Qin family's groom search. Immediately bring people to the Qin family's groom search and guard outside. Carefully investigate who among these people has the strength to kill Yin Yi. If you find out who the culprit is, immediately bring people to capture him and bring him to the sect." The blood demon said fiercely, "As long as you do this, Master will naturally reward you handsomely. You can choose any one of the sect's 3 supreme scriptures." There were 3 supreme scriptures in the Blood Cloud sect: the Blood Cloud Sun Concealing Technique, the Blood Demon Divine Radiating Scripture, and the Blood Sea God Refining Formation. Each of these 3 books contained an unprecedented amount of power, and they were all methods that could be cultivated to become an immortal. They were also the foundation of the Blood Cloud sect. Ordinary disciples could not see them at all. Only those who were truly talented or valued could be taught them. When Wan Tao heard this, a trace of light flashed in his eyes. He hurriedly said, "Rest assured, Master. No matter who dares to harm junior brother, I will do my best to find him. Even if I have to dig 3 feet into the ground, I will not hesitate." In his words, he expressed his loyalty and did not mention the scriptures at all. "Yes, that's for the best. Go and do it immediately. However, you must not act blindly without thinking when it comes to the Qin family." The blood demon waved his hand, indicating for him to leave. A strange expression flashed across Wan Tao's face when he heard about the Qin family. Without saying anything else, he quickly left the main hall. Not long after, he led a group of people and left Blood Cloud Peak, heading straight for China's Qin family. In the Zither Melody Valley, the cultivators who came gradually left. Although the surviving cultivators were regretful that they couldn't become the Zither clan's son-in-law when they thought of the large amount of artifact embryos on their waists, they were all overjoyed and felt that this trip was not in vain. Standing on the altar, Qin Xian's expression was gloomy as he sighed several times. When Katomi saw this, she softly said, "Father, don't be too sad. If we can't do it this time, we'll think of another way. Our Qin family has been passed down for so many years. We won't let it end in our generation. If it really doesn't work, I'm willing to wait 3 years and enter the heavenly demon secret mirror once. If I can obtain great luck and find the legendary mysterious pagoda, our Qin family will definitely be able to pass it down. If we can't find it, then the worst that can happen is that our Qin family will fight with that demon. This can be considered as the final contribution to the Zijin continent. Our Qin family's mission can be considered complete." When Katomi saw that no one could bring the green jade Zither out of the Zither realm, her face was filled with disappointment and relief. After all, it was no wonder. No one wanted their entire life to be decided by a marriage. It was just that as a descendant of the Qin family, she had to fulfill her responsibility and couldn't refuse. Forget it. This is all we can do now. We didn't have much hope for the green jade Zither in the first place. This is good too. At least, we don't have to sacrifice your happiness. After all, Qin Xian was the head of the family. Moreover, music was the best way to cultivate people. He took a deep breath and recovered his mind. He smiled at Katomi and didn't pursue this matter too much. "Mr. Qin, I would like to enter the Qin family to learn music. I wonder if you can accept." Just as the father and daughter were talking, there was still one person below the altar who had yet to leave. Looking towards the source of the voice, they saw Sakura, who was wearing a faint, sorrowful aura, standing below quietly as he spoke in a deep voice. Tian had come this time to learn the Qin family's Zither skills and music theory. This was also his only purpose in coming to the secular world. However, in the process, there seemed to be some side issues, and he made several enemies in succession. Of course, no matter how many enemies there were in the world of immortal cultivators, he wouldn't mind. He was very clear about his purpose. Therefore, when the others left one after another, Tian didn't leave. Instead, he stood below the altar and waited for the others to leave before opening his mouth to ask for permission. Tian's sudden words immediately aroused the curiosity of Qin Xian and Katomi, for gazes fell on him at the same time. When he saw that it was Tian, a strange look flashed across Qin Xian's eyes. He still had a rather deep impression of him. More than that, it was the nonchalant action of taking out the monkey wine in the valley. This made him realize that the person in front of him was no ordinary person. "So it's you. I remember that you used the priceless monkey wine in the valley to exchange for the pill formula and pill cauldron." Qin Xian stroked his beard and smiled. "Previously, you successfully passed the test of the heart-refining song. Before that, you already had the qualifications to join the Qin family and become a disciple of the Qin family. Now, there's no exception. As long as you don't join other sects, you can become a member of the Qin family." His words were quite pertinent. The heart-refining song was the only test for the Qin family to choose disciples. Those who passed it were qualified. Although Tian didn't choose to become a disciple of the Qin family before, he could choose to join again now. Katomi's eyes lit up. She knew that the person in front of her was the most mysterious and unfathomable of the 5 people her father had mentioned. She couldn't help but secretly size him up. At this moment, Tian lightly shook his head and said something unexpected. "Family head Qin, you've misunderstood. I'm not saying that I want to join the Qin family and become a disciple of the Qin family." "What? What do you mean by that?" Qin Xian frowned slightly. The aura of a family head immediately burst forth from his body. When he looked at Tian, he faintly felt a heavy pressure. If it was someone else who hadn't reached the core formation stage, they would feel a bit suffocated by this pressure. However, it didn't seem to have any effect on Tion. He stood proudly in place and naturally revealed a unique temperament. He said, I, Tion, only want to learn the art of the Qin, the theory of the Qin, and the music of the world. I don't want to learn the Qin family's secret art of sound attacks. If you agree, I can give you 10 embryos from the Qin realm in exchange. With the 7 sins demonic zither in hand, Tion had already begun to grasp the essentials of sound attacks. Moreover, he also had the divine melody of 7 sins, which was known as the divine melody of sound attacks. With this divine melody, it wouldn't be difficult to master the art of sound attacks. He was a demon and didn't want to enter a human cultivation family. That way, there would be a huge burden in the future. In his previous life, he was a businessman. He knew very well that in the real world, many things appeared to be priceless on the surface. However, as long as the price was right, even the most precious treasures could be easily placed in front of you. There is only one important point: exchange. Whether or not he could achieve his goal, there was no other reason than the price. A strange expression appeared on Qin Xian's face. He said strangely, if you want to learn the art of the Qin, the theory of the Qin, and the music of the Qin, you can find any zither master in the secular world to learn. Why do you want to learn in my Qin family? You even took out weapon embryos to exchange. Do you know that these weapon embryos, placed in the immortal cultivation world, are difficult to find even with 10,000 gold? You actually took out 10 of them at once. Obviously, he was a little surprised. Speaking of which, Tion's request was too strange. The Qin family had never met anyone who entered the Qin family not to become an apprentice, but only to learn the art of the Qin and the theory of the secular world. It had to be said that this was quite strange. Which zither master in the secular world can compare to a Qin family? How can one teach more music than a Qin family, and more complete? Either don't learn, or learn. I, Tion, want to learn the best, the most complete. Tion had already anticipated Qin Xian's doubts, and said without hesitation. After he finished speaking, he opened his storage bag and took out 10 weapon embryos that were shining with treasure light. Each of these weapon embryos could be said to be of high quality. As long as they were completely refined, they would be mid to high-grade magic artifacts. If they were nurtured as life source magic artifacts, they might be able to become magic artifacts in the future. The magic artifacts in the hands of all the Qin family disciples were all obtained from the Qin realm. In other words, they were refined from these weapon embryos. From this, it could be seen how important the Qin realm was to the Qin family. These weapon embryos could only display their true power in the hands of the Qin family. At this moment, Tion threw out 10 of them at once. Just to learn the art of the Qin, it could be said that he was very generous. Qin Xian looked at the 10 weapon embryos floating in the air and didn't immediately answer. Katomi carefully examined Tion's body. When she saw his eyes, her body couldn't help but tremble slightly. What kind of eyes were these? They actually contained so many emotions. Vicissitudes, sorrow, determination, unyielding. All kinds of indescribable emotions intertwined together, causing his gaze to become incomparably deep. When she saw Tion say that he wanted to learn the zither, she couldn't help but take a step forward and say softly, if it's only to learn the art of the zither, I, Katomi, will agree and teach you personally. However, you cannot live in the Qin family. You must build your own bamboo house in the valley. You cannot call yourself a disciple of the Qin family. I will also not teach you any secret techniques related to sound attacks. Can you accept these conditions? Why not? Tion nodded without hesitation. With a wave of his hand, he put the 10 weapon embryos into his storage bag and lightly tossed them towards the spell altar. Then, without any reluctance, he turned and left the Qin realm, walking towards the purple bamboo forest in the Qin Music Valley. He was going to build a bamboo house in the bamboo forest as a temporary place to live. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 173. Seeing Di Shirtian leave, Qin Xian glanced at Katomi in confusion. Xin, why did you suddenly agree to his request? Something like this has never happened before in our Qin family. Could it be that you? He looked at her strangely, the meaning in his words self-evident. Father, what are you thinking of? Qin Xin was extremely intelligent and naturally understood. A layer of silk-like pink quickly appeared on her snow-white neck. She was wearing a veil, and her face couldn't be seen, but it could be guessed that she must be blushing. Lightly stomping her foot, she said angrily, "Daughter and he have only met once. How could I have such thoughts? I only agreed because these 10 embryos are of great use to our Qin family. This time when the Zither realm opens, it will definitely take a long time for the demon's soul to be born again. Our Qin family has also taken in a large number of disciples, and it just so happens that we can give them to the new disciples. Furthermore, daughter sees that this Sakura seems to be someone who loves the Zither. That's why I agreed." There was a trace of urgency in her voice, as if she was afraid that others would misunderstand. Forget it. If you agree, then so be it. It's just a Di Shirtian anyway. I don't think he'll do any harm. Qin Xian also doted on Katomi. He only shook his head and didn't object. After a moment of thought, he said, "However, since we've accepted his gift, we must teach him seriously. How about this, Xr? The Qin family's fundamental secret techniques can't be passed on to outsiders. He wants to learn the music of the secular world, so you should teach him the zither and various musical pieces with all your heart. When he learns them, let him leave on his own." In his words, he treated this as a transaction. Speaking of which, the Qin family didn't suffer a loss. In fact, they made a huge profit. If they still didn't work hard, they would be ruining the Qin family's countless years of reputation. And this was exactly what Di Shirtian wanted. In the purple bamboo forest, Di Shirtian chopped down some bamboo and built a bamboo hut at the edge of the forest. It was a small bamboo courtyard. It wasn't too big, about the size of a normal 3-person house. It looked a little simple and crude, but it was more than enough for him to live here. He pushed open the bamboo door and walked into the room. There was a bamboo bed, a few bamboo stools, a bamboo table, and nothing else. From the looks of it, it was as simple as it could get. Sitting on the bamboo bed, Di Shirtian thought to himself, the matter of learning the zither has basically been decided. As long as I don't give myself away during this period of time and let others discover my identity, I will be able to learn the zither. At that time, I will naturally be able to leave the Zither Sound Valley and return to the southern barbarian lands. However, what exactly is the heavenly demon mystery realm that the Qin family patriarch and the others mentioned just now? That's right, when Qin Xian and Katomi were talking, although their voices weren't loud, they didn't try to cover it up. Unexpectedly, Di Shirtian heard everything clearly. He did not care much about the rest, but he remembered the heavenly demon secret realm that they had mentioned. The heavenly demon secret realm had the word demon in it. There is no doubt that this secret realm was left behind by a certain expert of the demon clan. If there is something left behind, it might be of great benefit to the demon clan. Just by the 2 words, heavenly demon, one could imagine that the owner of this secret realm must be a powerful expert of the demon clan in ancient times. 3 years later, the heavenly demon secret realm. No matter what, this secret realm belongs to the demon clan. How can I let the immortal cultivators monopolize it? Maybe I should intervene and go in to take a look. Maybe I can get some opportunities. Di Shirtian thought quickly. Not long after, he secretly made up his mind. Although he didn't know what the heavenly demon secret realm was, he only needed to know that it was definitely related to the experts of the demon clan. It would be a pity if he didn't go and take a look at such a place. However, the decision was one thing. As for where the heavenly demon secret realm was and when it would open, he would have to slowly find out in the future. After thinking for a while, he put these thoughts aside for the time being. He sat cross-legged on the bamboo bed and silently began to check the situation in his body. Ever since he formed the meridian of sorrow, He hadn't really used his cultivation method to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. He was secretly looking forward to what kind of changes the meridian of sorrow would bring to him this time. Do. However, just as he was about to use his cultivation method, a rhythmic knocking sound came from outside, causing him to stop immediately. He listened carefully and heard a familiar voice. "Mr. D, are you resting?" "I, Hua Wenwu, would like to see you." There was a tone of respect and fear in the voice. This person was none other than the second prince of China, Hua Wenwu. Come in." As soon as he heard him, Di Shitian couldn't help but open his eyes. There was an indescribable light in his eyes. He said in a low voice and let him in. He wasn't too surprised that Hua Wenwu could come to the Harp Melody Valley. After all, he was the one who told him about the existence of this place. It wasn't strange that he could come. What Di Shitian was really interested in was why he suddenly came to see him at this time. Ji, a young man in embroidered clothes, carefully pushed open the bamboo door and walked in. It was Hua Wenwu. After entering, he saw Di Shitian sitting on the bamboo bed and hurriedly bowed to greet him again. Di Shitian wasn't too cold and indifferent as he let him sit on the bamboo stool. He sat down on a bamboo bed and asked, "Wenwu, why aren't you in the imperial capital? Why did you suddenly come here to find me? Did something happen in the imperial capital?" Di Shitian only glanced at his face slightly and saw that there was a trace of anxiety, a trace of apprehension, and a trace of grief and anger on his face. With his life experience, how could he not see that Hua Wenwu had come this time? Because something must have happened. He also attached great importance to Hua Wenwu, because this was related to a plan he had suddenly thought of. In the plan, if he wanted to implement it, Hua Wenwu was the best candidate. Otherwise, how could he have anything to do with a prince in the secular world? Sure enough, when Hua Wenwu heard this, he stood up again and bowed deeply, saying, "Mr. D, this time you have to save Wenwu again. If you don't help me, Wenwu will become a dead man soon." There was a trace of deep resentment in his voice. He didn't hold back at all. Like pouring beans out, he spilled out everything in one go. It turned out that Di Shitian didn't follow him into the imperial capital. He had been in the Music Valley all this time. In the imperial capital, Hua Wenwu returned. Although he was the eldest son and had the right to inherit China, most of the officials in the court also supported him. After all, the succession had always been orderly. Therefore, if nothing unexpected happened, there was almost no problem for him to ascend the throne. However, his younger brother didn't give up. He used some unknown method to pull all the high officials in the Hall of High Officials in the country to his side. The Hall of High Officials had always had a high status. Holding on to it almost meant that he had an absolute trump card. However, Hua Wenwu's backer, Di Shitian, had been in the Music Valley all this time and hadn't returned to the imperial capital. This immediately made Hua Wenwu passive. He was afraid that the group of high officials would kill him at any time. Feeling anxious, he didn't hesitate any longer and ran over here. This led to the scene in front of him. "You mean to say that you want me to help you deal with that group of high officials?" Di Shitian looked up at Hua Wenwu and said indifferently, "I will settle the time and place for you. You just need to sit on the throne." Di Shitian's answer immediately made Hua Wenwu's face light up with joy. However, hesitation suddenly appeared on his face. He hesitated a few times, as if there was something in his heart that he couldn't get off his chest if he didn't say it out loud. After hesitating a few times, he finally gritted his teeth and said, "Mr. D, if you can make a move, then that group of high officials can be easily destroyed. However, you don't understand why I value you so much and want to help you, right?" Di Shitian said indifferently, as if he could see through people's hearts. When Hua Wenwu heard this, his body couldn't help but tremble. He said very nervously, "Yes, there's no other reason." Di Shitian looked into the distance as if his gaze could pass through the bamboo wall. He said, "I will help you ascend to the throne. You only need to do one thing for me. Once you ascend to the throne, create a golden body for me and worship me as a totem. Once you ascend to the throne, all the people will worship you and worship you every day." His words were like iron and stone. Every word seemed to contain a vast aura. The aura of solitude inexplicably surged out. The air in the entire bamboo building seemed to become incomparably heavy, as if it was oppressed. At this moment, in the instant that all the words were said, his body suddenly seemed to become abnormally tall. It was as if he wanted people to look up to him. Boom! In the sky above his head, there was a sudden explosion of thunder, sculpting a golden body, a totem. This was no different from the gods that were worshipped in the temples of the secular world. Moreover, it was a level higher. This totem meant that as long as this decree was issued, it meant that China would be Di Shitian's descendants. This was just like how in Di Shitian's previous life, the people of Huaxia had always called themselves the descendants of the dragon, the descendants of the dragon. In Huaxia, the divine dragon was the totem. Di Shitian's words meant that he wanted to be like the divine dragon in China. He wanted to have the same status as the divine dragon in China. This was why Di Shitian wanted to help Hua Wenwu. To achieve a totem that was recognized by the whole of China, it must be implemented by the emperor. It absolutely cannot be done by others. What? Mr. Di, you want to make a totem? Hua Wenwu was so shocked by Di Shitian's words that he let out a cry of surprise on the spot. He looked at him in disbelief. Yes, I am a totem. If China is in trouble, I can protect you. Di Shitian glanced at Hua Wenwu slightly meaningfully. He walked to the window and looked at the purple bamboo forest. It seemed that he was not in a hurry at all. He was not afraid that he would not agree at all. Sculpting a golden body, a totem, before leaving the myriad demon valley, he did not have such a shocking idea in his mind. Naturally, he had his own reasons for doing so. When I write a book, every chapter has its own purpose. Every character also has its own purpose. When I write a book, I don't write it out of nowhere. When I write a book, there are highs and lows. I hope that all the friends who like this book can come back and vote a few times. If you have the ability, please help me subscribe to this book so that I can always maintain a kind of exuberant passion. I have a lot of plots in my mind. Whether I can write them or not depends on this kind of passion. I hope that everyone can give me this kind of passion. In addition, thank you to the dozens of brothers who voted today. Thank you very much. Chapter 174. As for why he had this idea, it was entirely because when he met Hua Wenwu and fought with the 3 Chinese consecrators, he had obtained a jade slip from the last consecrator's body when he killed him. This jade slip was quite mysterious, and there was a powerful restriction in it. He could only see the most superficial part of it, but it was this little bit that shocked Di Shitian greatly, because the things inside had somewhat subverted some of his understanding of cultivation. In this world, there were quite a lot of different kinds of power. For example, the most basic power of yin and yang and the 5 elements was the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, the essence of the sun and the moon, the qi of the netherworld, the power of the immortal spirit, and so on. These were all powers that ordinary people knew. There were also some special powers, such as the power of the stars in the sky, emitted by countless stars in the starry sky, and the power of desire produced by countless living beings in the world because of their desires. Finally, there was a power called the power of wish. The so-called power of wish was actually the power of faith. The generation of faith was the sincere worship of a certain existence in the hearts of all living beings, such as a certain God in their hearts. Every day, every time, all kinds of wishes were deposited and so on. In this way, a mysterious power would be produced in their bodies, and this power was the power of faith. There was a saying from ancient times, "Man strives for a breath, and Buddha strives for a stick of incense." This incense was not really incense, but the power of faith. This power of faith was quite mysterious. On the purple gold mainland, perhaps only a handful of people knew about it. Even if they knew, to collect this power of faith, they would need to use a lot of methods. The simplest method was to build a temple in the secular world and create a golden body. Then, good men and women would come to offer incense, or pray for protection, or deposit their beautiful wishes, and so on. At the same time, their bodies would emit wisps of power of faith that ordinary people could not see and gather in the golden body in the temple. The golden body was where the power of faith was collected. It wasn't difficult to collect faith. What was difficult was that there were very few people who truly knew how to use the power of faith. If they didn't know how to use it, no matter how much faith they collected, they were just fools who didn't know how to use it. Therefore, on the purple gold mainland, there were many people who knew about the power of faith. However, there were very few people who would actually collect it because of the power of faith. Although there were many temples and Taoist temples in the secular world, even if there was a golden body with the power of faith, no one could take it out. Of course, Di Shirtian wasn't aware of any of that. He had only acquired some information from the Jade Slip. According to the information, by gathering faith power, one could avoid inner devils, clear one's mind, and gain enlightenment. One would be impervious to all evils, and would be able to vanquish the horde of devils. Although it didn't sound like much, Di Shirtian discovered the value of it at first glance. Avoiding inner devils, clearing one's mind, and gaining enlightenment. This undoubtedly meant that if he could absorb the power of faith and stay in it, he would not be troubled by inner devils. His understanding of various magic arts and realms would be incomparably fast. This point alone was enough to make him pay attention to the power of faith. Coincidentally, when he heard that Hua Wenwu was a prince of China, he immediately came up with a plan. He didn't kill him, but went all the way to the imperial capital of China with him. He wanted to use his identity, or rather, he wanted to use the identity that Hua Wenwu would have in the future to help him collect the faith of the whole of China. The method that other people usually use to collect faith power was nothing more than building their own Taoist temples and building a golden body for themselves. However, Di Shirtian had a lifetime of experience. Almost instantly, he thought of a better way, which was to build a golden body in a Taoist temple. That way, not only was it troublesome, but also required a lot of effort. Not to mention the slow speed of developing believers, it was also very difficult to collect the faith power. However, Di Shirtian thought of an excellent way from the totem of the descendants of China in his previous life. That was to build himself into the totem of Huagua. Totem was the symbol of country. As long as one was a Chinese, he would be deeply remembered in his mind. Then, it was almost natural for the emperor to order him to collect faith power. Hua Wenwu's expression changed quickly several times. China had not established a totem yet. Totem had never been established in the surrounding countries. It was not difficult to establish a totem. However, once established, it meant that the totem would have a kind of transcendence. Hua Wenwu, who had been a prince for so many years, naturally thought of this. Therefore, even he did not dare to agree easily. Di Shirtian was not in a hurry. His face was full of certainty, as if he had already guessed Hua Wenwu's final answer. For a moment, the whole bamboo building fell into a kind of silence. After a full quarter of an hour, Hua Wenwu's churning thoughts finally settled down. He secretly gritted his teeth, and his face slowly became firm. He raised his head, looked at Sakura, and said, "All right, this junior agrees to this matter. As long as Mr. can help me successfully ascend the throne, this junior will clear Mr.'s name, build a golden body, and raise a totem after ascending the throne." The tone of his words was unusually cautious. Obviously, it was because of the importance of this matter. It involved too much and was too broad. Almost at the moment when he agreed, it also meant that in the future, there would be a high and mighty totem in China. This almost instantly changed the fate of all the people in China. One could imagine how heavy this decision was. Good, very good. Di Shirtian turned around, and his indifferent face finally became much gentler. Obviously, he was also very happy because the matter was confirmed. He nodded and said, "Although what I want to make is a totem, you can rest assured that I have no interest in the politics of China, and I will not interfere. You'd better act as your emperor. In the future, if China is in trouble, as the totem of China, I will naturally help you solve the problem and protect the country. Politics? What a joke. He was not in the mood to care about the politics of the secular world. Moreover, he was very clear about his identity. He was a demon. If he really wanted to become an emperor and establish a country, he would establish it among the demons. He would gather all the demons in the world and establish a country of demons. Now, he wanted to make a totem because he wanted to know specifically what magical effect the power of faith had. Moreover, he wanted to see if the power of faith could suppress the hidden danger in his body and eliminate it. If it could, it would really be a kind of supreme treasure. He would try his best to collect it. Then he paused and said, "You can leave behind a location of the Hall of Consecrations and the specific consecrations. Then you can go back. I will clean up all of this for you. You just have to wait for the day you ascend the throne. However, you must not forget what you promised me. If you dare to go back on your word, I can take back everything I gave you." Hua Wenwu's heart skipped a beat. With a solemn expression, he said, "Mister, please rest assured. I will not go back on my word. After this junior ascends to the throne, I will establish the totem on the same day and build a golden body for you." In his mind, the scene of Di Shurtian outside Ping and town appeared in his mind. He could not help but remind himself secretly. After that, Hua Wenwu put down all the things in his mind. He took out a scroll from his body, which recorded all the information about the hall of worship. It seemed that he had prepared it long before he came. He put on the bamboo table, turned around, and left respectfully. He closed the door and left with light footsteps. Di Shurtian glanced at the scroll on the table, and an inexplicable look flashed across his face. He thought to himself, "Hua Wenwu agreed, which means that my collection of faith is on the right track. If there is no accident, I will be the totem of China. However, I can collect faith, but how to use the power of faith is quite a big problem." Various thoughts flashed through Yishuan's mind. Regarding faith, he had only obtained a part of it from the jade slip, or the most basic part, which was some information about what faith was and how to collect it. The rest was sealed by an extremely powerful restriction. If he wanted to obtain the rest of the information, he had to break the restriction in the jade slip. He had also tested the restriction. With his current strength, there was absolutely no way to break it. Perhaps he would have this strength when he condensed his Niden and really transformed into a demon. Forget it. Anyway, as long as I collect the power of faith and put it there, no one can take it away except me. The more I collect, the better. It definitely won't be bad. When I break the jade slip in the future, I should know how to use it. Di Shurtian was not in a hurry. Encountering the jade slip and collecting faith were completely unexpected products. No matter what, he would not be too disappointed. What's more, now he got the promise of the Qin family to teach him music theory. This was the real purpose. Now that the purpose had been achieved, the purpose of coming to the secular human world was basically completed. Di Shurtian couldn't help but secretly breathe a sigh of relief. Standing in front of the window, looking at the void, he seemed to see somewhere. "Mom, don't worry, I won't let you and my brother wait too long. As long as I have enough strength, I will save you from the sea of bitterness. At that time, I will make the entire 1,000 beasts sect atone for the crime of capturing you." Do. Not long after Di Shurtian had sunk into contemplation, about half an hour had passed. After Hua Wenwu left, there was another crisp knocking sound on the door. The sound was very rhythmic, and it could be heard that the person outside the door should be a rather cultured person. Di Shurtian was awakened by the knock on the door. He frowned slightly and turned his head to look at the door, secretly guessing who it could be. There were very few people he knew here. He didn't have any friends. Could it be the Qin family? To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.qidian.com and read more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 175. Who is it? It was only a single word, but it seemed to contain the power of 1,000 caddies. It was majestic, and it struck people's hearts. Those who heard it couldn't help but feel that they were a head shorter than him. "I am Xiaolon, the servant of my master, Shui Wuhan. I am here on orders from my master. I know that Mr. D is going to build a hut in the Guqin Valley to learn the art of the Guqin. Therefore, I am here to bring you some daily necessities. I hope you won't refuse." Outside the door, a young girl with an orchid-like temperament stood respectfully. This woman was none other than Lan one of the 4 maidservants who had always been by Shui Wuhan's side. She had also entered the Zither domain and had once witnessed Sakura's crazy fighting style in front of the Heavenly Lake. His demon-like arrogance was simply shocking, and it could be said that she had a deep impression of him. Knowing that the person in the room was Di Shirtian, how could she be negligent? Shui Wuhan? Di Shirtian frowned slightly. He remembered him. There were a total of 3 people in the Guqin realm who had left a deep impression on him. 2 of them were Wu Wudi and Shui Wuhan, and the third was Lu Xiling. The former had expressed goodwill to him and had the intention of befriending him, but the latter had become his enemy. He was afraid that when they met again, it would be a scene of death. "Come in." Di Shirtian knew that this was Shui Wuhan's gesture of goodwill, but he did not refuse and let Xiaolan in. Xiaolan entered, and her clear eyes scanned the room. When she saw Di Shirtian, her heart skipped a beat. She did not dare to look at him and quickly took out daily necessities from her storage bag. They were not Dharma treasures. Shui Wuhan was very good at this. She did not use any Dharma treasures to express goodwill, but some small daily necessities. It had to be said that this method was easier to get closer to people. Among these items, there were household furnishings, wine, tea leaves, tea sets, wine sets, incense burners, and so on. All the necessities of ordinary people were placed in the room. The utensils were ordinary items, but the wine was old and good. The tea leaves contain a wave of spiritual qi. Obviously, it was the spiritual tea of the immortal cultivation world. This tea could be said to be precious. Under Xiao Lan's help, in the blink of an eye, the originally simple and crude bamboo building immediately became somewhat warm. There were all kinds of items. Nothing was missing. "Does your young master have something to say?" After Xiao Lan had finished everything, Sakura finally opened his mouth and spoke a sentence. "Mr. is indeed formidable. My young master only asked this servant to bring a message. He hopes to make friends with Mr. If you're willing, you can come to the Imperial Capital's Water Moon restaurant for a chat. My young master will be in the Imperial Capital this month. Young Master Wu is also with my young master," Xiao Lan said respectfully. "Imperial Capital, Shuiyu Restaurant?" Di Shirtian pondered for a moment, then looked at Xiao Lan and said, "Your young master is so considerate. I have no reason to decline. Don't worry, I'll remember Shuiyu Restaurant and will naturally make a trip there." Naturally, he could see Shui Wuhan's goodwill and did not dislike it. She had also sent all kinds of items. No matter what the purpose was, this was still a favor. Moreover, Di Shirtian also thought that now that he had transformed into a human, his identity as a demon had not been exposed. He could use this time to inquire about some secrets of the immortal cultivation world from other cultivators, especially about the heavenly demon secret territory. He also wanted to know about the distribution of the various forces in the immortal cultivation world, and so on. Although it was his first time in this world, he did not want to go back after learning the Zither. At the very least, he wanted to see the various situations in the immortal cultivation world and find out more about it. Otherwise, it would be a waste of his time in the secular world. Moreover, in his heart, he had a good impression of Wu Wudi and Shui Wuhan. It seemed that they were top talents in the immortal cultivation world and would definitely know more things. Therefore, he did not object to making contact with them. Instead, he wanted to facilitate it. Otherwise, he would not have accepted this room full of items. In that case, Xiaolan will take her leave and report to my young master. Xiaolan was very polite and bowed. Di Shirtian waved his hand, indicating that she could do as she pleased. At this time, in the tallest restaurant in the imperial capital, 2 men were sitting opposite each other. There were all kinds of delicious dishes on the table, and beside them were 3 maids holding wine jugs and serving them. Of the 2 men, one was a handsome man with a graceful bearing. It seemed that he was the ideal husband of a young girl in love. The other had a rough appearance, but had a unique spirit. It seemed that the two men's temperaments were on par. They were Shui Wuhan and Wu Wudi. Brother Shui, you just sent someone to deliver something to Di Shirtian. Could it be that you want to invite him as well? Wu Wudi took a sip of wine. In my opinion, Di Shirtian is a person worth befriending and a good opponent. He was able to cross the heavenly lake in one fell swoop. With such strength, even I have to admit defeat. However, this person seems to be quite mysterious. There's a faint feeling that I can't see through him. It's as if he's shrouded in a fog. Wu Wudi slowly spoke of his understanding of Di Shirtian. Although they had only met briefly, it had left a deep impression on him. Shui Wuhan smiled indifferently and said, Big Brother Wu's eyes are indeed unparalleled. Sakura is indeed very mysterious. However, looking at his temperament, he seems to be somewhat aloof and indifferent. However, he is quite decisive. Even when facing Lu Xiling, he dared to say that he would fall out with him immediately. Such courage can be said to be outstanding among people. It's this mystery that makes me even more curious. It would be best if we can invite him this time, but it doesn't matter if we can't. The things that happened to Di Shirtian were indeed very curious. For example, the aura of sorrow and the power that erupted from his body were simply earth-shattering and terrifying. It was hard not to be curious. Furthermore, Di Shirtian had taken out 10 weapon embryos in the Guqin Valley just to learn the art of the zither from the secular world. When Shui Wuhan and the others heard this, they couldn't help but secretly admire him. Everything seemed to have some unexpected charm in it. Wu Wudi couldn't help but nod in agreement. That's good. If he comes, then, with the strength of the three of us, we might be able to find something in the place you mentioned. Shui Wuhan and Wu Wudi seemed to be discussing something. At this time, in a remote valley outside the Guqin Valley, a few cultivators in blood-red robes were gathered. These cultivators were all in the Foundation establishment realm. In front of them was a man in black robes. The fluctuations that were emitted from his body indicated that this person was a core formation realm cultivator. If this person was in the Blood Cloud sect, they would recognize that this person was none other than the Blood Demon's disciple, Wan Tao. When Wan Tao received the mission, he immediately realized that his opportunity had come. As long as he completed the mission, he would have the opportunity to obtain the 3 ancient scriptures of the sect. After obtaining them, he would be able to soar to the sky. He might even be able to break through to the nascent soul realm, or even reach an even higher level. Therefore, without any delay, he led a group of people and rushed to the Zither Melody Valley at the fastest speed possible. However, he remembered Schwemmo's instructions and didn't dare to provoke the Zither clan in the Zither Melody Valley. He only stood guard outside the Zither Melody Valley and sent people to investigate who had the ability to kill Shui Yini in this matchmaking contest. Eldest senior brother, we have already investigated. Among the cultivators who participated in the groom search, there were a total of 4 who could pose a threat to the young sect master. Their identities have also been investigated. A cultivator with a cold expression reported to Wan Tao. Oh, there are actually 4? Who are the 4? Tell me immediately. I believe that they're definitely not ordinary cultivators. Wan Tao asked with interest. Eldest senior brother is right. None of the 4 are simple. One of them is the elite disciple of the profound Heartsword sect, Lu Xiling. Although he is in the middle of the Foundation establishment realm, he is a sword cultivator and can faintly match a cultivator who has just entered the core formation realm. Another one is the young master of the Aquamoon Cave, Shui Wuhan. This person's cultivation is also in the late Foundation establishment realm, and he seems to have a powerful magic treasure. It is very powerful. One of them is a martial cultivator called Wu Wudi. Although he is a rogue cultivator, his combat abilities are very strong. The last one is called Di Shirtian. His origins are very mysterious. It is as if he suddenly appeared without any trace. However what? Wan Tao's eyes shot out a sharp light. However, this person had a conflict with the young sect master in the Music Valley. If the Qin family head did not intervene, I am afraid that they would have fought on the spot. In my opinion, among the four of them, Tian is the most suspicious. However, we cannot rule out other possibilities. At that time, the conflict between Tian and Shui Ini was not a big secret. A simple inquiry would reveal the truth. Therefore, it was understandable that Tian was the first suspect. After a moment of silence, Wan Tao's eyes flashed. Good. Keep a close watch and continue the investigation. Pay close attention to Tian. No matter what he does, do not let him go. Yes. At this time, Tian, who was in the valley, had no idea that a disaster was about to befall him. He sat in his room, holding the scroll in his hand and reading its contents. Obviously, Hua Wenwu had made ample preparations. Not only did the scroll contain a detailed map of the entire imperial capital, but it also contained the location of the Hall of Worship and the people who were in the Hall of Worship. It could be said that everything he knew was recorded in the scroll. It could be considered quite detailed. According to the scroll, the Hall of Worship had a total of 9 worshippers. Back then, 3 of them died at his hands, leaving only 6. However, he was not too sure about their cultivation levels. Tian guessed that there were no core formation cultivators among them. Since there were no core formation cultivators, killing them would not be a big problem. 6 cultivators. That's good. The moon is dark and the wind is strong. It is a good night to kill. He raised his head and looked at the sky outside the window. Dark clouds were gathering. It seemed that if nothing unexpected happened, it would be a moonless night. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 176. According to Hua Wenwu's narration and Tian's own speculations, he had a general understanding of what was going on in the secular world of China. Speaking of which, most of the people who came to be consecrated were rogue cultivators. Moreover, they were those who were more interested in power and enjoyed worldly pleasures, or they hoped to borrow the power of a country to help them collect spirit stones, spirit medicines, and even various materials needed for cultivation. There were people with all kinds of goals. However, although those who came to be consecrated with all kinds of goals could advance by leaps and bounds in a short period of time, it was often difficult for them to achieve much. For example, in a small country like China, almost no consecrated could reach the core formation realm. The reason was that the secular world was not suitable for cultivation. First, there were no spirit stones. Second, the spiritual qi was thin. It was far from comparable to the various undamaged mountain ranges and cities in the cultivation world. Third, it was easy to be confused by the secular world and all kinds of pleasures. In the end, they would not think about making progress and would be content with enjoying life. They would not have the firm heart to pursue the Tao and become an immortal. How could they achieve anything? Unless it was a super cultivation clan like the Chu clan, which was supported by all kinds of resources. Even in the secular world, controlling a country would not only not delay one's cultivation, but would also allow one to develop more and more. That was a clan with a strong foundation. It was far from being comparable to a cultivation clan like the Li clan in South Mountain City. Not to mention, in a small country like China in the East, where there were constant wars year after year, how could there be any powerful consecrated? At most, they would be at the late foundation establishment realm. The Qin clan has already agreed to teach me the zither. This matter is of the utmost importance. There cannot be the slightest change. In the next few years, I will concentrate on learning the zither in the valley. However, the matter of the totem cannot be delayed. I will settle it tonight so that I can concentrate on staying in the valley. At this moment, Sakura had already decided on the future itinerary for the time being. As for those consecrators, he didn't think that they could cause any trouble. He would just settle it on the way and then go to the imperial capital to find Shui Wuhan and Shui Wuhan to understand some matters in the cultivation world. Then, he would return to the Harp Melody Valley and focus on his cultivation. Time silently passed. In the blink of an eye, the sun had set in the west. Darkness gradually enveloped the entire world. The bright moon that originally hung above the heads of all living beings was blocked by pitch-black clouds, making it difficult for the moonlight to shine down. The night seemed especially silent. Only insects and birds chirped in the night. In the purple bamboo forest, in the bamboo building that had just been built during the day, a black shadow suddenly flashed out of the building and blended into the darkness. Following the direction of the valley, it quickly left the Zither Music Valley. He rushed in the direction of the imperial capital. The Hall of Consecration was located in the imperial capital. Furthermore, it was near the imperial palace. Naturally, if he wanted to kill someone, he would have to head to the imperial capital. Tion didn't use the evil wind to travel with the wind. That would make him too big of a target. Instead, he used the swift art on himself. His feet moved like the wind, and he quickly moved forward. After using the swift art, one could travel thousands of miles. It was one of the most common spells used by cultivators. Tion had also learned it before. However, not long after he left the Zither Music Valley, a pitch-black shadow darted out from an unusually hidden corner. This person's aura was completely concealed. Standing in the dark, if one didn't look carefully, they would have missed it. This method of concealing one's aura was really amazing. This person stood in the darkness for a while, witnessing the entire process of Tion's departure. Then, he turned around and quickly left. Not long after, this person came to a small, secluded valley. In the valley, Wan Tao of the Blood Cloud clan was quietly cultivating in a small cave that had just been opened up. Sensing that someone had come, he quickly opened his eyes. 7 Junior Brother, weren't you monitoring Tion's movements in the Zither Music Valley? Why did you suddenly come back? Could it be that Tion has made some movements? Wan Tao is also a smart person. Halfway through his words, he had already vaguely guessed the reason for this person's arrival. It was just that he didn't really confirm it and still had some doubts. Eldest Senior Brother is indeed Eldest Senior Brother. You actually guessed at the moment I returned. That 7th Junior Brother said respectfully, just now, when I was outside the Zither Music Valley, I suddenly discovered that Tion had mysteriously left the valley. Looking at the direction he was heading in, it seemed that he was going to the imperial capital. As for what exactly he was going to do, I was anxious to report it to Eldest Senior Brother, so I didn't follow him. Tion suddenly went to the imperial capital. Wan Tao's eyes flickered quickly a few times, and a trace of ruthlessness appeared on his face. He said, "Good. If he is hiding in the Zither Music Valley, it is inconvenient for us to enter the valley." Since he actually came out himself, that couldn't be better. In my opinion, the person who killed youngest Junior Brother, if there are no accidents, is most likely him. But in his heart, he said, Tion, in this investigation, among the 4 people, you have the least background. You appeared out of nowhere and had a conflict with Shui Ini. It's not good for me to touch Shui Wuhan and the others. No matter whether you're the murderer or not, I will first capture you and take it as completing the mission. As he thought about it, he said, 7 Junior Brother, you guard the valley. I will go to the imperial capital now and directly capture Tion. After that, we will all return to the sect together. There will be no shortage of benefits for us. After he finished speaking, his figure flashed and rushed out of the cave. A pair of blood-colored flying hooks appeared under his feet. He stepped on them and soared into the air, quickly rushing towards the imperial capital. His speed was extremely fast. From the moment he moved to the moment he disappeared, it was as fast as lightning. One could only see 2 blood-colored lights streaking across the sky. So this is the imperial capital. It looks like a city that never sleeps. The city gates were usually closed at night. However, how could it be difficult for Tion? He easily entered the city. As soon as he entered, he was immediately shocked by the bustling scene in front of him. He saw that the city did not seem to be desolate because of the night. Instead, it was even more lively. Hawkers hung lanterns and set up stalls on both sides of the street. There were all kinds of snacks, small trinkets, flower lanterns, and so on. It could be said that there was everything one could think of. On the streets, there was an endless stream of people shouting and shouting. The young ladies who rarely came out during the day came out one after another. Many of them were even disguised as men. All kinds of laughter could be said to be endless. The prosperity of the imperial capital could be seen at a glance from this. Ever since Sakura came to the purple gold mainland, this was the first time he had seen such a lively scene. The degree of liveliness was comparable to the feasting and debauchery at night in his previous life. All kinds of businesses were in full swing. Since it was the first time he encountered such a situation, Tion was interested and walked unhurriedly on the streets. However, he did not buy anything. He just wanted to feel the atmosphere. This was because this lively scene made him involuntarily recall the events of his previous life. He did not stay in the crowd for too long. Looking at the sky and calculating the time, he turned and walked unhurriedly in the direction of the palace, slowly leaving the lively night street. With the scroll that Hua Wenwu gave him, there were various road distribution maps of the imperial capital. Following the map in his memory, he walked slowly. Not long after, he arrived at a place not far from the palace. There was no need to describe the golden splendor of the palace. It was the most luxurious place in a country in the secular world. It was difficult to describe with thousands of words. Xian's target was not the palace. Standing in the darkness, he looked at a palace beside the palace. With his sharp eyes, even if he was thousands of meters away, he would still be able to see it clearly. This palace, on the surface, looked very simple and unadorned. However, the area it occupied was quite large. It was likely that hundreds of people could live inside. On the plaque of the palace, there were 3 simple and unadorned words: Worship Hall. It looked natural and had a kind of intimidating aura. Ordinary people would not even dare to stand in front of the worship hall for a moment. It's here. Tion saw and knew that the palace in front of him was where his target was. After finding his target, Tion did not even have time to greet. In the demon mansion in his body, a stream of pure demonic aura, a third of his own, rushed out of the demon refining cauldron like a long river. It rushed quickly into the meridians of his body through the newly formed meridian of sorrow. After one round, this huge stream of demonic aura rushed into his right hand like a tide. For some reason, after the demonic aura flowed through the meridian of sorrow, it naturally carried a strong sense of sorrow. His right hand mysteriously turned into a tiger's claw. After the tiger's claw appeared, it gathered and expanded. In almost a few breaths, this tiger's claw became the size of a human face, surrounded by rolling black gas. Boom! When the power in his hand had accumulated to a peak, Tion took advantage of the momentum and blasted towards the worship hall. In an instant, countless streams of black gas roared and surged out crazily, directly condensing into an incomparably huge pitch-black tiger's claw in midair. It slammed down towards the worship hall with a loud bang. Bang! This claw had almost covered half of the consecration hall onto the claw. When the claw came down, the consecration hall instantly let out a terrifying roar. The materials used to construct the consecration hall were merely various materials from the secular world. How could they withstand an attack with 30% of Sakura's power? Half of the consecration hall was forcefully smashed into ruins by the claw. Who is it? How dare you kill in China's worship hall? Today, I will kill you as a sacrifice to junior brother Xing. The consecration hall turned into ruins, and almost in an instant, 2 sharp sword lights shot out from the consecration hall. A roar resounded, and the sword lights split into hundreds of sword lights, covering the sky and covering the earth as they pounced towards the Sakura's location. At the same time, 3 incomparably embarrassed figures flew out of the worship hall. Their clothes were tattered, but they could not hide their luxury. The 3 people faintly had a kind of aura of superiority, but their faces were full of grief and indignation. Their eyes seemed to be about to spit fire. To be continued. If you want to know the future, go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 177. Among the three cultivators, one of them was old and had an expression of extreme anger. He was the one who sent out the hundreds of sword rays. The other was middle-aged, and this person was also strange. He held a bag of holding in one hand, and in his other hand there were 4 or 5 talismans that were shining with spiritual light. The last one seemed to be the youngest and had a green flying sword circling around him. Sword lights shot out to protect his body. Traces of fear faintly appeared in his eyes. Terrifying, too terrifying. At the same time that the three cultivators were furious, they couldn't help but feel a trace of fear in their hearts. Sakura's claw slammed down without even a single word of warning. In the hall, there were originally 6 cultivators cultivating together. Who would have thought that such an unexpected disaster would suddenly descend? 3 of the chi condensation cultivators were unlucky and were smashed into meat paste on the spot. In China, they could call for wind and rain. Even the emperor had to treat them with care. Who would have thought that there would be a day when someone directly came knocking on their door? Their expressions changed greatly. It could be said that they were burning with anger. Humph! Deshirtian looked at the 3 surviving cultivators. At a glance, he could see that the old and middle-aged cultivators were both in the foundation establishment stage. As for the younger one, he was in the middle stage of the chi condensation stage. Not long after he became a demon beast, he dared to engage in a fierce battle with a core formation cultivator in the southern wilderness. It was obvious that he had condensed his first demon vein and directly stepped into the middle stage of the demon beast. 4 foundation establishment cultivators. As long as they didn't have powerful magic tools or spells in their hands, he could almost sweep them all away. When he saw the whistling sword lights, his body trembled. Strands of black chi crazily gushed out from his countless pores. With a clang, they instantly condensed into pitch-black crescent-shaped blades around his body. As soon as these blades appeared, they quickly flew up and down his body. As they flew, they drew mysterious trajectories. It enveloped his entire body so that not even a drop of water could leak out. Ding-dang, ding-dang. In the instant that the demonic mist blade was formed, the several hundred rays of sword light quickly twisted over. Every single ray of sword light appeared to be abnormally swift and fierce. They intersected as they swept over, as if they wanted to crush everything in front of them in a fine powder. They were abnormally sharp and frightening. As expected of a powerful attack launched by a foundation establishment cultivator in grief and indignation. However, when they arrived in front of Deshirtian, they were unable to touch him at all. They were blocked by the blades that filled the sky around him. More than 20 blades burst out with cold light, dancing up and down. Each blade seemed to be solid. Compared to the sword light, they were sharper and more powerful. A series of crisp booms were heard. The sword lights were shattered one by one, turning into strands of sword chi that scattered in all directions. When they landed on the ground, they created craters of various sizes. However, not even a corner of Deshirtian's clothes was lifted. Who exactly are you? Could it be that you don't know that this is China's Hall of Worship? The old man looked at the sword light that he had released with all his strength. Unexpectedly, it was easily blocked by those strange blades. The several hundred rays of sword light only destroyed 2 or 3 of them. When the 3 cultivators saw this scene, their hearts suddenly tightened, and they were incomparably shocked. How could they not know that the person standing in front of them, Deshirtian, was definitely an expert that was several times stronger than them? Humph, you don't need to know who I am. This is the Hall of Worship, and I am not blind. However, even if you're a Hall of Worship, so what? Today, the people I want to kill are you. Die. Deshirtian looked coldly at the 3 of them and spat out these words indifferently. With a thought, the remaining blades around him immediately emitted crisp, vibrating sounds. The demon mist blades could become stronger as his cultivation increased. This was because they were essentially condensed from his demonic chi using a method of compression. It was almost as terrifying as a physical attack. Not only were the blades as thin as cicada's wings, but they were also as fast as lightning and terrifyingly sharp. The current demon mist blades could even cut through a mid-grade defensive magic tool. This kind of attack was terrifying and quite powerful. From a moment he laid eyes on the 3 cultivators in front of him, he knew they were dead men. Without hesitation, the 9 blades formed groups of 3 and arranged themselves in a triangular formation. Then, with lightning speed, he attacked the 3 cultivators at the same time. Everyone, be careful. These blades are very terrifying. Even my sword light can't do anything to them. Seeing Sakura launching an attack without any trace of politeness, he was immediately afraid that this person was really here to take their lives. The old man's complexion changed, and with a flash of light on his arm, a golden shield like a golden eagle's wing immediately appeared on his arm. In an instant, it emitted bursts of golden light and rapidly expanded. In the blink of an eye, it became as tall as a person and directly blocked in front of them. Bang, bang, bang! The 3 blades chopped at the shield, and a burst of golden light immediately flashed on the shield. However, this golden light only flashed for a moment before it was incomparably dim. The sharp blades cut through the golden light and chopped at the shield, forcibly leaving behind 3 clear blade marks. However, they didn't completely break through the shield. This shield seemed to be a high-grade defensive magic tool. Vajra Talisman, Raging Flame Talisman, Profound Ice Talisman, Earthen Shield Talisman. The middle-aged cultivator also became ruthless and threw out all the talismans in his hand. In an instant, his body flickered with golden light and a golden barrier appeared, as if he was a golden arhut. At the same time, balls of flames, countless ice blades, and all kinds of talismans were quickly thrown out as if they didn't cost money. Moreover, at the same time he threw them out, he immediately grabbed a handful of talismans from his storage pouch. Damn, there were all kinds of talismans. In almost the blink of an eye, all kinds of magic techniques filled the air in front of him. The 3 demon mist blades were blown apart by these magic techniques. Moreover, there were also a large number of magic techniques that bombarded D. Shurtion from all directions. This kind of attack was simply hair-raising. This was how convenient talismans were. As long as the spiritual energy within them was drawn, they could be released. They didn't need to be slowly cast like magic techniques. As for the last chi refining cultivator, he didn't have the ability of the first 2. He only took out a Vajra talisman and slapped it on his body as a form of defense. The flying sword in his hand flew out and emitted rays of sword light to meet the 3 blades that were slashing at him. Unfortunately, with his ability, how could he block the current demon mist blades? The flying sword in his hand was only a low-grade flying sword. Crack! With a crisp sound, the flying sword broke. It arrived in front of him like lightning and landed on the golden light inside his body. Although the Vajra talisman was a defensive talisman, it didn't resist for too long. In almost the blink of an eye, the 3 blades sharply broke through the Vajra talisman and landed on the cultivator's body. He didn't even have time to scream before his head was chopped off on the spot. Good, you have some ability. You actually managed to block this king's demon mist blade. However, your luck ends here. D. Shurtion looked indifferently at the various magic techniques that were bombarding him. Suddenly, a ray of jade light flew out from his body and stopped in front of him. Upon closer inspection, it was a jade zither that flashed with a demonic light. The 7 Sins demonic zither was D. Shurtion's strongest attack. It could be said to be a top-grade magic tool. Even compared to magic treasures, there wasn't any difference. Its strength was extremely terrifying. Back then, D. Shurtion dared to fight a core formation cultivator to the death and even cut off his opponent's head with this zither. He held the zither with one hand and placed the other hand on the zither's 9 strings. He heavily plucked them in an unusually barbaric manner. Ding, ding, ding. Suddenly, the tyrannical sound of the zither rang out. The sound of the zither turned into sound waves. Like a tide, it covered everything within 100 meters. Rings of mysterious sound waves rippled out. Wherever they passed, even space seemed to distort. Everything within this range was destroyed. Due to the sound waves, the houses on both sides turned into dust, shattering from the vibrations. All the spells that were ferociously pouncing towards Sakura were continuously weakened by wave after wave of sound waves. Like a broken boat in the ocean, they were mysteriously annihilated in the blink of an eye. The scene was extremely terrifying. Ding dong, ding dong. The zither strings were shaken again. This time, it wasn't sound waves that were emitted. Instead, it was two crystal-clear sound blades that swept towards the two foundation establishment cultivators like lightning. Although the middle-aged cultivator desperately threw out all kinds of talismans, he couldn't slow down for even a moment. The sound blades were terrifyingly sharp. Wherever they passed, everything in front of them was cut in half. When they landed on his body, they immediately left a small cut on his throat and pierced through his body. Shurtian's cultivation was higher than the two of them. The natal demon artifact in his hand was comparable to a magic treasure. Furthermore, the attack of the Seven Sins demon Zither was extremely terrifying. How could the golden eagle shield withstand it? A large hole was directly cut open. All of this seemed to take a long time to describe, but in fact, in less than 10 minutes, China's Hall of Worship was destroyed in one fell swoop by Shurtian. Shurtian didn't feel the slightest bit of pride. It wasn't that he was too strong, but that his opponents were too weak. Looking at the three corpses with fear and unwillingness in their eyes, he first used the mysterious power of the king's mark to extract 6 souls. Then he swallowed the 6 corpses and threw them into the demon refining cauldron. He turned and left, his body disappearing into the darkness. After Sakura left, several figures soared into the sky from various directions of the imperial city. They quickly arrived in the sky above the battlefield and looked at the consecration hall that had already turned into ruins. Traces of strange light flashed in the eyes of these people. They secretly guessed who was the one who attacked inside. However, from the moment Sakura made his move to the end, the time was rather short. There was simply no one who saw his figure. How could there be any results? After a while, they all dispersed. Pata! A series of steady footsteps sounded in the alley. Shui Wuhan said that she would stay in the Watermoon restaurant. Based on the map, it should be in the east of the city. After destroying the Hall of Worship, Shurtian pondered as he walked in the direction of the Watermoon restaurant. To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. I support the author, and I support the original readers. Chapter 178. In the imperial capital, if one were to ask anyone in the city about the most famous places, they would be able to easily answer. The first was naturally the imperial palace. This was the place that ordinary people yearned for the most in their lives. The second was the Jade Wave Lake. The Jade Wave water in the lake connected to the sky, and there were countless aquatic products. The scenery was boundless, and it was a place where countless scholars and poets were reluctant to leave. The third one was the Shueiware restaurant in the city. Why would a restaurant have such an amazing reputation? There was no other reason. Firstly, the restaurant was extraordinarily tall, with a total of 5 floors. It stood erect and looked down on all the other mansions. The specifications of each floor were different. For example, the first floor was for ordinary people to eat and drink. The second floor was for elegant scholars or rich people to sit on, and further up, one needed to have a matching identity. Ordinary people couldn't go up, and the 5th floor, which was the highest, was a place where ordinary people couldn't stay. Even the emperor couldn't go up. The service inside was also superb and couldn't be found in the entire imperial capital. It was said that even the maids were beautiful, and the food and wine inside were things that couldn't be enjoyed in other places. It could be said to be the life of an emperor. There were many sayings that even the emperor in the imperial palace would go to the Shueiware restaurant to enjoy himself every once in a while. From this, it could be seen that the Shueiware restaurant had almost become a symbol of the imperial capital. What a good restaurant! In ancient times, there was actually someone who could build such a restaurant. Unbelievable. After Sakura easily destroyed the consecration hall, he followed the location recorded on the map. Not long after, he arrived in front of the Watermoon restaurant. Looking at this restaurant, it was towering 5 stories high. In ancient times, it could be said to be quite rare. Moreover, the materials used to build it were all incomparably precious wood. What was even more praiseworthy was that the restaurant, as a whole, didn't appear to be very imposing. Instead, it had a kind of ancient fragrance and was filled with a simple history. At first glance, not only would people not have any disgust, but they would inexplicably have a good impression of it and couldn't help but want to go into the restaurant to have a look. In general, there was only one word: comfortable. Everyone who saw it felt a sense of comfort in their hearts. Disregarding everything else, just the word comfortable was enough to make this restaurant's business difficult. After all, eating and enjoying was nothing more than the word comfortable. If one couldn't even enjoy a meal, how could one expect to have customers? This was what Tion admired the most. In his previous life, he was a businessman, so how could he not see the wonders of this restaurant? Moreover, even though it was nighttime, it was still brightly lit and bustling inside. Although he was very surprised by this restaurant, he didn't think too deeply about it. He moved his feet and walked into the restaurant. As soon as he entered the restaurant, a beautiful maid stood in front of him. Her beautiful big eyes looked at Tion, and a sweet smile appeared on her face. She bowed and said, "Sir, may I ask, which floor do you want to go to, and what do you want to eat?" Her voice carried a trace of professional respect, which made people unable to have any ill feelings towards her. "I'm looking for Shui Wuhan," Tion said in a deep voice. Since Shui Wuhan had asked him to meet here, she definitely had some instructions. Therefore, he didn't hide his purpose. "What?" When a maid heard this, she was startled. She carefully sized up Tion, and her expression became even more respectful. She said, "So you are the guest that the young master ordered to come. The young master is on the 5th floor. Please follow me." After saying that, she led the way upstairs. "Young master?" This form of address caused Indra's eyes to flash with a trace of light. Previously, he hadn't expected that this Watermoon restaurant would actually be the property of Shui Wuhan. It seemed that the power behind Shui Wuhan wasn't small. She didn't even let go of the secular world. Under the guidance of the young girl, the entire journey was smooth and unhindered. Up ahead, someone had already gone ahead to inform them. When they reached the 5th floor, Shui Wuhan, who was dressed in white and had a graceful bearing, smiled and said, "Xiao Lan just returned not long ago. I didn't expect Brother D to come personally. Wuhan was in a hurry and couldn't go out to welcome you. I hope Brother D won't take offense." Shui Wuhan had a natural temperament that made people feel close to her. Now that she had come out to greet him, she was even more courteous. "What are you talking about? Speaking of which, I have to thank Brother Shui for helping me by those things. Since you have an appointment, no matter how busy you are, you have to come." Tion nodded and said a few polite words. Then, he purposely withdrew his indifference. "Haha, let's not talk at the door. Brother Wu is waiting inside. Come, let's talk inside. Please." Shui Wuhan gestured with her hand. Tion didn't argue and walked in together. The maid who brought him up also obediently closed the door and told people not to let anyone disturb them. When they entered, they saw that a table of sumptuous dishes had already been prepared. Waves of fragrance assailed their nostrils. The fragrance was pleasant. It was a one-in-a-million good wine. Wu Woody was inside. When the three met, they were a little polite and sat down. The wine table had always been the best place to get closer to each other. Tion had a deep understanding of this. Moreover, he wanted to understand the situation of the immortal cultivation world from Shui Wuhan and the others. Therefore, he changed his indifference and chatted about everything. Unknowingly, the friendship between them slowly deepened at the wine table. After 30 minutes of wine, Sakura finished the wine in his cup in one gulp and put down the cup. He looked at the two of them and said, "Brother Shui, Brother Wu, I presume that the reason why you guys invited me over this time isn't purely for the sake of drinking. In the Guqin realm, I already have a good impression of the two of you. If you have anything to say, just say it." Previously, Shui Wuhan had given him gifts and expressed goodwill. Now that they had invited him here to drink and deepen their relationship, it was definitely not the main purpose. There must be other things involved. Sure enough, Shui Wuhin and Wu Wudi put down their wine cups and looked at each other. Shui Wuhin's expression also became serious. She set up restrictions around them and said, "Brother D is indeed Brother D. I wonder if Brother D knows about the bone-burying wasteland." She didn't say it immediately, but asked a strange question. Sakura frowned slightly. He couldn't figure out what this sentence meant. What burial wasteland? To be honest, on this purple gold mainland, he was only a small demon clan that had only been born for close to 2 years. The places that he had been to, other than the Tiger Hill mountain range and the Southern Barbarian, he didn't have much understanding of the other places. To put it bluntly, he was like a child that had just stepped into society. What he knew and understood was really too little. Everything had to start from scratch. He didn't even have a rough understanding of the situation in the immortal cultivation world, let alone the bone burial wasteland. That was an existence that was even more like a complete fog. If he didn't know, he didn't know. There was no need to pretend that he knew. Tion only pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, "I'm not afraid of being laughed at by the two of you. I've always been in the mountains, cultivating wholeheartedly. It was only recently that I came out to experience the outside world. I really don't know much about the outside world. I also don't know anything about the bone-burying wilderness." When Wu Wudi heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. So Brother D actually just came out of the mountains. It seems that being able to meet here is indeed a kind of fate. Just based on this let's have a toast. Shui Wuhin also smiled and picked up the wine cup. After drinking another cup, he smiled and said, "So it's like that. No wonder Brother D doesn't know. It's fine if Brother D doesn't know. I can explain it to you." As he spoke, he paused, as if he was thinking about something. Then he said, "Speaking of the bone-burying wilderness, it should be called the bone-burying abyss." With this explanation, Tion listened seriously. He knew that these things were probably secrets that most of the other immortal cultivators didn't know about. He wanted to understand the entire immortal cultivation world and the entire purple gold mainland. Naturally, he couldn't miss this great opportunity. It turned out that the bone-burying wilderness he spoke of wasn't far from China. To be more precise, it was actually in the area between the 3 countries in the eastern region. That was the famous chaotic area, the ancient battlefield where the 3 countries constantly fought. It was an ancient battlefield where tens of thousands of soldiers were buried. The bone-burying wilderness was in this ancient battlefield that had existed for countless years. In the depths of the ancient battlefield, it was said that there was a mysterious area shrouded in a layer of black fog all year round. In that area, even if the sun was high up in the sky, one could often hear waves of ghostly howls coming from within. There were constantly people who said that they had seen ghosts nearby with their own eyes. Moreover, there were some brave people who went in. Unfortunately, 8 or 9 out of 10 people who went in never came out again. There was only one lucky person who, after coming out, said the words "bone-burying wilderness" and went crazy. Not long after, he also died. This attracted the attention of the immortal cultivators. However, this place was truly mysterious. Among the immortal cultivators who went in, there were even core formation cultivators. However, it was easy to go in, but difficult to come out. It was common for core formation cultivators to die inside. Although it was mysterious, the immortal cultivator's curiosity was truly terrifying. After hundreds of years of exploration, people actually found something inside. No, to be more specific, it was a mysterious palace. It was very strange. Ordinary palaces couldn't be moved, but this palace was constantly moving. Today it was here. Tomorrow, it might be in another place. The palace was quite dilapidated, as if it had been damaged in some great battle. It was very strange, but it was certain that this palace was definitely an incredible treasure. Or perhaps there were countless treasures hidden in the palace. All kinds of guesses made a large number of immortal cultivators rush in, wanting to try their luck. Needless to say, someone was really lucky and managed to rush into the palace. Although he was thrown out by the restrictions in a short while, when he came out, he was holding a blade of grass in his hand. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com to read more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 179. Don't look at it as a blade of grass. Damn, could it be one of those common grass? Someone recognized that it was actually the grass of immortality that had not appeared in the immortal world for tens of thousands of years. This grass of immortality could be said to be one of the miraculous spiritual essences of heaven and earth. Just by looking at the word immortality on it, one could guess how powerful it was. Legend had it that the grass of immortality had incredible power. If one swallowed the whole plant, one would probably die on the spot. However, if it was used to refine the mystical immortality pill and the longevity pill, it was simply a miraculous power that could steal the fortune of heaven and earth. Take the mystical immortality pill, for example. As long as one was still breathing, no matter how injured one was, if one's nascent soul, primordial spirit, and body were to collapse, swallowing one would guarantee that one's primordial spirit would be as good as new. In an instant, one would be restored to peak condition and the body would be reformed. Even if one was in the hands of the Grim Reaper, it could be pulled back. It was a supreme life-saving, immortal pill. Think about it. When fighting with other experts until both sides were injured, if one of them had an undying, profound pill, he would recover after eating it. If the other didn't, wouldn't that be a complete tragedy? From this, one could see its value. As for the longevity pill, it was even more powerful. Legend had it that after taking the longevity pill, a small chi refinement cultivator would instantly soar at the speed of a flying sword for 10 to 100 years. In 100 years, one would definitely become an immortal. Ascension. One could imagine the preciousness of such a pill. Its value was enough to make countless immortal cultivators go crazy. Of course, the difficulty of refining these two pills was not mentioned here. The grass of immortality was only one of the main ingredients, but that did not affect its value. It could be said to be a priceless treasure. The situation after that could be imagined. Countless immortal cultivators flooded in, but those who could find the palace were few and far between. Those who could obtain treasures were even rarer. However, those who obtained them, without exception, seemed to be born with great luck. Every one of them had great achievements in the immortal cultivation world. Often, they would fly to the upper realm in a short period of time. Fortuitous encounters naturally meant danger. Countless cultivators had lost their lives within the palace. In the end, many people realized that if this continued, then no matter how many people died, it would be difficult to find a fortuitous encounter within the palace. After all, not everyone could have such luck. Therefore, the matter of the bone burial wasteland slowly cooled down. Although there were still people going in from time to time to try their luck, they were no longer as crazy and blind as before. There were also many corrupt cultivators who found that this place was the most suitable place for them to cultivate. Many corrupt cultivators immediately filled the place, making it even more dangerous. A large number of cultivators who entered were killed by the evil cultivators. Immediately, the boneyard wasteland became desolate once more. The number of people who entered was even fewer. After all, fortuitous encounters were important, but their own lives were more important. Tion quietly remembered all of this carefully in his mind. He could not help but exclaim inwardly, "The purple gold mainland is really full of mysteries. Who knows how many ancient secrets are buried in this vast and boundless continent?" Even a tombstone in the strange cemetery of the southern barbarian had a terrifying power that could shake the heavens and earth. Who knew when the strange ruins in the underground of the southern barbarian had been left behind? His heart was in turmoil. Although he had not truly set foot in the entire purple gold mainland, the various mysterious areas that he had discovered during this period of time gave him an indescribable feeling about the entire continent. He secretly guessed that he did not know how many secrets were buried in this continent. What kind of scenery was the purple gold mainland in the ancient times? How were these mysterious areas formed? As he thought about it, the entire purple gold mainland seemed to be shrouded in a thick layer of fog in his heart. It made him unable to see through the mysteries hidden within. So, the Boneyard Wasteland actually has such a history. Di-Shirtian returned to his senses and looked at Shui Wuhin and Wu Wu Wu. However, you suddenly mentioned this matter. Could it be that you intend to enter the Boneyard Wasteland? With his intelligence and wisdom, he guessed the purpose of Shui Wuhin and the other's words in the blink of an eye. If they did not intend to enter, there was absolutely no need to mention this matter at this time. Since they had mentioned it, there was an 80 to 90% chance that they wanted to enter. Sure enough, Wu Wudi said in a deep voice, "That's right. Although the Boneyard Wasteland is dangerous, it is the best place to gain experience. If there is an opportunity, I want to enter that mysterious palace. Anyway, I have long been curious about that place. This time, Brother Wuhin mentioned it to me, so I agreed. Yes, the Boneyard Wasteland has many natural treasures that cannot be found outside. Even if we cannot find the palace, there will be other opportunities. Therefore, I would like to invite Brother D to join us. The three of us will enter together to gain experience." Shui Wuhin looked at Di-Shirtian with an expectant gaze. Obviously, she hoped that he would agree. One more person meant one more portion of strength. What's more, Sakura's powerful battle prowess was something they had witnessed with their own eyes in the Zither realm. Sakura muttered to himself and didn't say a word. His mind was spinning rapidly. Everyone had curiosity, and he was no exception. Naturally, he also wanted to experience it. Every experience could give him a huge accumulation, and when it accumulated to a certain extent, it would bring great benefits to a person. The importance of gaining experience was incomparably important. However, in the blink of an eye, he had already made up his mind. With a hesitant expression, he said, "I am naturally interested in exploring a place like the bone-burying wasteland. However, I heard that the Sky Demon's secret plane will open in 3 years. Furthermore, during this period of time, I have already decided to learn the Zither in the Zither Music Valley. I am afraid it will be very difficult to go with you." As he spoke, he subtly mentioned the Heavenly Demon's secret zone. Although he did not know much about it, he wanted to bring up this topic so that he could obtain some information. Hearing this, Shui Wuhin and Wu Wudi looked at each other and laughed. "Brother D, don't worry. I did not say that we have to go now. We do not intend to miss out on the Sky Demon's secret realm. In my opinion, the three of us are already at a peak. Therefore, we have decided that after the Sky Demon's secret realm is over, we will cultivate in seclusion for a period of time and strive to form our gold core. We will raise our cultivation to a considerable level before going to the Boneyard Wasteland." Hearing this, Di-Shirtian also understood that they did not intend to go now. After all, the Boneyard Wasteland was full of danger. If they entered now, they might really become a pile of bones. Therefore, they had long planned to cultivate to the core formation stage before going together. That way, they would have a greater chance of success. Di-Shirtian and the other two ate and chatted upstairs. They made a promise to meet again in 10 years and go to the Boneyard Wasteland together. They had made a promise of 10 years. As for whether it was intentional or not, they had some understanding of the Sky Demon's secret realm. At least, they knew where the secret realm would open. They also learned some common knowledge of the cultivation world. After all, Shui Wuhin and Wu Wudi already knew that Di-Shirtian was a greenhorn. They consciously explained all kinds of common knowledge, some general situation in the cultivation world, various things to pay attention to, and so on. All of them benefited Di-Shirtian greatly. In today's cultivation world, chi refining and foundation establishment cultivators were the most common. Core formation cultivators were already quite extraordinary and could take charge of their own affairs. Nascent soul cultivators were old monsters. It was not that there were no cultivators above the nascent soul stage, but most of the cultivators above that stage were keen on cultivating in seclusion. Unless there was something important or something that moved them, they rarely showed themselves. That was why the current situation in the cultivation world was roughly the same. They talked until late into the night. Tion did not stay in the restaurant for long. Instead, he chose to leave and return to the Guqin Valley. After all, he did not know when the Qin family would begin to teach him the Guqin. After leaving the restaurant, he walked on the crisscrossed streets. He naturally fell into deep thought, secretly thinking about the precious information he had obtained today. The Sky Demon's secret realm will open on North Night Island. However, I still don't know where North Night Island is. It seems that I have to find another opportunity to ask. Tion muttered to himself. He knew the location of the Sky Demon's secret realm, but he knew too little about the Purple Gold mainland. He did not even have a rough map. However, since he knew the name, it would be much easier to find it. As long as he had the heart, it would not be difficult to find it. What he was thinking about was actually something related to the immortal cultivation world. In the current cultivation world, almost no cultivators above the nascent soul stage came out. This situation was very beneficial to the demon clan. If he took advantage of this period of time to develop vigorously, he might have the opportunity to accumulate some strength. In that case, even if the cultivation world found out that the demon clan's strength had increased greatly in the future, it would not be easy to do anything about it. Realizing that this period of time was a great opportunity to expand his strength, Tian's heart began to burn with passion. He pondered as he walked. Slowly, he began to approach the city gate. At this moment, outside the imperial city, on the only path to the Guqin Valley, a black-clothed man blended into the darkness. His eyes were fixed on the city gate. In his hands were two blood-red long hooks. Although they were called hooks, they were actually somewhat similar to water-splitting thorns. The blades of the hooks shone with a cold light and faintly emitted a strong smell of blood. However, this smell of blood was not confined to the hooks and did not spread out. The blood-red light flickered in the darkness, appearing abnormally evil. This person stood in the darkness, like a poisonous snake hidden in the darkness. Usually, he lurked motionlessly and did not make a sound. However, at the critical moment, he could deliver a fatal blow and kill his target. This kind of person was quite terrifying. He could be said to be proficient in the way of the assassin and the art of forbearance. He was one of the most terrifying types of enemies. He's coming out. Following his gaze, a figure directly flew out from the city wall and landed on the ground. The figure was walking in his direction. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 180. The one who came down from the city wall was naturally Sakura, who was preparing to return to the Zither Sound Valley. A mere city wall couldn't even stop the martial arts experts of the Jianghu, let alone a demon like him. He easily left the imperial capital, looked at the direction slightly, and walked towards the road back. However, after taking a few steps forward, Tian stopped in his tracks. His brows were tightly knitted, and his eyes narrowed, emitting rays of cold light as he scanned the surroundings. That black shadow had long been hiding behind a big tree. His whole body's aura was restrained, not revealing the slightest bit. He didn't even look at Sakura. He looked like a stone without any breath of life, which made people unable to detect him. Even when Sakura's demon awareness swept over him, he didn't find anything wrong. He only treated it as a stone that was passed over. How could this be? There is clearly no other danger nearby. Why do I suddenly feel uneasy? Tian stopped in his tracks, and his eyes flashed. Just now, when he was about to continue walking forward, he did not know why, but a strong sense of uneasiness suddenly emerged in his heart. He felt uneasy, and his mood became quite irritable for no reason. This was not the first time he had experienced this kind of whim. When he was in the southern wilderness, it was because of this feeling that he saved Little White at the most critical moment. Now, he inexplicably had this feeling again. Moreover, it was accompanied by a strong sense of danger, as if some great danger was approaching. This feeling made all the hair on his body stand up involuntarily. This was why he suddenly stopped and scanned the surroundings as quickly as possible. However, he did not find any danger. Could it be that some family member related to me is in danger? That's why there is such a premonition. This thought naturally surfaced in his mind after repeated probing and failing to find anything. After all, something like a sudden inspiration was, firstly, related to himself, and secondly, related to the people related to him. Now, that he didn't seem to be in any danger, it meant that the people related to him might be in danger. Who could it be? Tion secretly guessed. However, after thinking about it, Mother Tiger and his brother were in the Thousand Beasts sect. Even if they were in danger, it was likely that distant water could not quench the immediate thirst. If it was the Southern Barbarians, then it was possible that Little White was in danger. And in the Southern Barbarians, there was a strong person like Baihu looking after them. Logically speaking, there should not be any major problems. After pondering for a moment, he was unable to confirm his suspicions. He could only keep these thoughts in his heart. He stopped and continued to walk forward. However, as he walked, he kept an extra eye on his surroundings. His demonic sense constantly scanned his surroundings, vigilant of everything. Waves of energy naturally rose from his entire body. The muscles on his arms coiled up, and his meridians surged under his skin like dragons. He was secretly on guard. Pata! Pata! His footsteps were steady and rhythmic as he walked forward step by step. The time between each step was almost the same, and the distance he covered was also unusually similar. Something's wrong. There must be something wrong. The more Sakura walked forward, the more his heart was beating wildly. That kind of innate alertness towards danger that came from the King of Beasts was telling him that there was definitely a fatal danger in the vicinity. When he realized this, his footsteps that were originally moving forward suddenly turned back. His figure was like lightning as he madly charged towards the imperial capital from which he had come. Chi! Just as he turned around and was about to leave, a bloody light flashed in the darkness and stabbed towards Di Shirtian's back like lightning. This attack was really silent and unimaginably fast. Wherever it passed, there was not even a trace of fluctuation in the air. It was simply strange and extraordinary. If he was not careful, he would be stabbed by this bloody light on the spot. However, Di Shirtian, who was running forward at full speed, seemed to have a pair of eyes on his back. His body stopped at will, and the change between moving and static was so fast and sudden that it made people who saw it want to vomit blood. His feet stepped to the left, and his body turned. The bloody light was originally aimed at his back, but with this turn, it became his left arm. Poof! It seemed that the body was not inferior to the martial cultivators, but under the bloody light, a deep wound was easily cut open. A stream of blood splashed out, but Di Shirtian did not hesitate at all because of this. Not knowing when, he was holding the Seven Sins demonic zither in his left hand, and his right hand touched it heavily. Ding dong! A translucent crescent-shaped sound blade instantly slammed into the blood radiance. With a crisp ding sound, the bloody light was hit and trembled in midair. Its shape was revealed, but it was a blood-red hook. The blood hook flew backwards, and when it flew 5 feet away, a hand gently held it in its hand. In an instant, a figure that seemed to be covered in darkness appeared in front of Di Shirtian. All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact all of this happened in the blink of an eye. Good method, good magic weapon. I don't understand how you found me. That black figure was no one else but Wan Tao, who had been waiting here for Di Shirtian. Wan Tao looked at Di Shirtian, glanced at his injured arm, then fell on the Seven Sins demonic zither, and finally looked at his face. Only those who were in the middle of it could sense that Di Shirtian's move was not simple. When he suddenly fled back, Wan Tao subconsciously made a move and revealed his tracks. Moreover, when he was escaping, he seemed to be escaping with all his might, but at the crucial moment, he could stop as he wished and avoid as he wished. Just based on this point, it could be seen that Sakura had actually arranged so many contingency plans in such a short period of time. He was not escaping, but deliberately drawing out the hidden danger. Who are you? If I am not mistaken, I have never seen you before, and we have no enmity. Why did you suddenly ambush me here to kill me? Di Shirtian's heart trembled, and his eyes shone as he stared at Wan Tao. In a situation where his heart was constantly on guard, he did not hesitate to use the move Draw the Snake out. As expected, he drew out the enemy that was hiding in the dark, and he couldn't detect it. He was actually unable to see through the cultivation of the person in front of him. If he was not mistaken, he was almost certainly a core formation cultivator. I am Wan Tao, a disciple of the Blood Cloud clan. You have no enmity with me? Wan Tao sneered. Could it be that you have forgotten about Shui Ini, whom you met during the Qin clan's groom search? Let me remind you, he is my junior apprentice brother. If I am not mistaken, my junior apprentice brother died at your hands. It was very strange. When he spoke of Shui Ini, not only did his words not contain the slightest hint of grief or indignation, they instead contained a sense of calmness. His two eyes seemed to be able to look straight into one's heart. Shui Ini? When Di Shirtian heard this, how could he not understand where this disaster had come from? However, it was naturally impossible for him to admit it at this time. He said indifferently, if you want to condemn someone, you can always find some excuse. You want to kill me, Di Shirtian? You're not qualified. Apart from myself, no one else can take my life. Kill. The light in Di Shirtian's eyes sharpened. With a thought, incomparably pitch-black crescent moon-shaped demon mist blades condensed around his body. There were over 20 of them. As soon as they appeared, they circled around his body and rapidly danced. As they danced in the air, they protected all of his vitals. Go! Sakura shouted, and 10 out of the 20 demon mist blades instantly split out and blasted towards Wan Tao without any restraint. This attack immediately covered his entire body from top to bottom under the attack of the blades. Faintly, it even sealed off the position where he could retreat and dodge. Each blade was as thin as a cicada's wing and as fast as lightning. After passing by, one could clearly see that the air had been cut open. Chi-chi sounds continuously rang out. The demon mist blades continued to grow stronger as Di Shirtian grew stronger. Now, the blades could even cut open a mid-grade defensive Dharma artifact. This attack was like a thunderbolt. It whistled through the air, and a fierce, killing intent spilled out. Wan Tao's eyes only contained a trace of a cold smile. The blood hook in his left hand flew into the air. The hook trembled and mysteriously split into countless rays of bloodlight. They quickly intertwined in midair, forming a huge blood net. As if catching fish, the net flew towards the oncoming blades. Puff, puff, puff. If Di Shirtian's demon mist blades represented a powerful attack, then this blood net was like the most gentle water. When the blades cut into the net naturally released a mysterious and gentle force. In an instant, this force was dispersed throughout the entire blood net. At the same time, traces of blood chi appeared and surged towards the blades. Under the influence of the blood chi, the blades mysteriously began to collapse. This blood chi actually contained a strong corrosive power. In the blink of an eye, the 10 blades were completely corroded. Moreover, the blood net did not dissipate. It immediately covered Di Shirtian. You want to kill me? Do you think the life of Di Shirtian will be so easy to take? Di Shirtian's body fiercely emitted an aura of supremacy. When this aura appeared, a tyrannical aura of supremacy naturally appeared in the world. The royal mark on his forehead wildly pulsated as if it was about to completely combust. Roar! With a thought, waves of pure, demonic chi gushed into his body like a surging river from the demon palace and quickly flowed into his throat. Using a special method, the demonic chi circulated in his throat. When the demonic chi had accumulated to a peak, the Indra's eyes shone with a substantial radiance. He suddenly opened his mouth and a tiger's roar surged out. Rumble! The tiger's roar was domineering and awe-inspiring. The aura of the king of beasts, the king of all beasts, was completely revealed in this roar. The ground beneath his feet seemed to turn over like an earth dragon, mysteriously forming a kind of wave shape and violently shaking. All the stones on the ground were shaken into fine powder on the spot. The surrounding trees all exploded one after another. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 181. Even the earth, under Sakura's tiger roar, became like the waves in the lake, undulating and shaking unceasingly. This roar simply ignored everything and passed into Wan Tao's ears on the spot. How could Wan Tao guard against this move? He only felt that in his mind, countless loud, thunderous sounds suddenly resounded, shaking his mind until it went blank. 2 streaks of blood spurted out from his ears, and his eyes were seeing stars. Moreover, the tiger's roar had only just unleashed its power. Waves of sound waves quickly spread out in all directions like a tide with him as the center. That was not all. The sound waves condensed again and turned into pitch-black sound blades. Wan Tao had turned the sound waves into blades and turned them into tens of thousands of blades, like a fairy scattering flowers. They rushed towards the huge blood net, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. The sound blades formed from the tiger roar may not be as powerful as the sound blade from the 7 Sins demonic zither in terms of individual attacks, but in terms of numbers, they were very impressive. Furthermore, the sound blades were terrifyingly sharp. They materialized and landed on the blood web almost instantly. Although the blood web was very strong, it could not withstand the attack of thousands of sound blades at once. In the blink of an eye, it was cut into pieces. Condense. The blood net that was broken apart did not dissipate. Instead, it rapidly gathered together and once again transformed into a blood-colored long hook that flickered with blood-red light. However, the blood-red light on this long hook had already become somewhat dim. Evidently, it had suffered quite a bit of damage from the collision just now. Ding-dang! Just as Di Shirtian controlled the countless sound blades to attack Wan Tao's eyes finally regained their clarity. After all, he was a powerhouse in the core formation stage. Although he was injured by accident, causing his blood to boil and his true yuan to almost be unable to circulate, his core formation stage cultivation was cultivated by himself. He was not like Shweta, who took a shortcut. When he came back to his senses, he suddenly took out a small and delicate bell. There were mysterious talismans on the bell. He held it in his hand and shook it forcefully. The bell let out a clear and melodious sound, which actually woke him up from the shock of the tiger's roar. A kind of clarity shrouded the surroundings. The sound of the bell could actually block the tiger's roar outside. I didn't expect you to know such a powerful sound attack. Fortunately, I knew that I was coming to the Heart Melody Valley. In order to prevent any conflicts with the Qin clan, I intentionally brought along this god-summoning bell that I accidentally obtained. Otherwise, I would really fall into your trap. Today, I'll let you experience the power of my blood-soul hook. Wan Tao was filled with hatred as he glared at Di Shirtian. His eyes were terrifyingly cold as he formed a strange seal with his hands and struck the 2 blood hooks. Immediately, the blood hooks emitted a strong blood-red light and soared into the air. It was very strange, as they did not attack the sound blades that were flying at high speed. Instead, they fiercely collided with each other in the air. In an instant, the 2 blood hooks turned into a cluster of dense blood fog. The sound of water splashing could be heard from within the blood fog. A blood-colored river surged out in a mysterious manner from the blood fog. Perhaps it was not appropriate to call it a river. It was more appropriate to call it a blood-colored stream. After this blood river was formed, it immediately swept towards the sound blades. This was the reversal of the blood river that Wan Tao had cultivated for several dozen years. This blood river was formed from the blood hooks. This technique was called mistransformation among flying swords. It could be said to be a profound technique in controlling swords. His blood river was also a relatively powerful type of mistransformation. This blood river was not a simple blood river. The water inside was filled with a strong corrosive power. Even if a magic tool fell into the blood river, it would be easily corroded. It was quite terrifying. Now that it had swept the sound blades into the blood river, they only violently tumbled a few times before being swallowed whole. There was not the slightest movement. In a few breaths of time, all of the sound blades in the air were swallowed up by the blood river. A strong smell of blood spread out and filled the air. It corroded all of the surrounding vegetation and caused them to wither on the spot. There was a strong, evil aura that seemed incomparably evil. Tion, don't think that I'm afraid of you just because you have a sound attack. You're just a mere foundation establishment cultivator. Let's see how you'll break through my blood river. Wantao's expression became incomparably evil. He pointed his finger, and the blood river that had swallowed the sound blades immediately roared and swooped down towards Tion. Everywhere it passed, the air would violently tremble. Under such circumstances, Sakura was still rather calm. He held the guqin with one hand, while his other hand landed heavily on the 9 strings of the guqin. He forcefully pulled and released the strings. The strings vibrated, and a sound wave spread out in all directions along with the vibrations of the strings. This sound wave was even more shocking than the tiger's roar. In the surrounding air, one could faintly see traces of distorted ripples. Within a radius of 10 meters, everything was shrouded in a sound wave domain, completely shrouding Sakura within, causing an additional layer of incomparably powerful protective shield to appear outside his body. Boom, boom, boom. The river of blood surged forward and slammed into the area filled with sound waves, creating a terrifying boom. The river of blood was formed by the 2 blood hooks. Wantao was a core formation cultivator, so these blood hooks were already considered magical treasures. Adding on his own cultivation base, the 2 blood hooks were already considered magical treasures. This collision was truly like the weight of Mount Tai. The frightening power actually caused the sound domain, which was filled with the power of sound waves, to tremble violently. The distorted space turned into a frightening scene that could be seen with the naked eye. Using sound waves to defend is indeed very unique. But you're just a foundation establishment cultivator. If you want to fight against a core formation cultivator, it's like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Today, I'll let you know the true strength of a core formation cultivator. Wantao said mockingly. He didn't care about using other methods. There was only one way to control the blood river, and that was to ram. He wanted to use the blood river to ram Tian's defense. Fierce, really fierce. Although it was barbaric, it was undoubtedly a display of strength. I'm stronger than you, so I have the right to be fierce. Ram. The blood river swooped down again and again in the air, crashing madly towards Tian. Every time it crashed, the sound wave domain trembled violently. Tian's right hand, which was on the zither strings, was hit by the terrifying recoil. Wounds appeared on his hand, and blood dripped onto the zither. It was abnormally beautiful. The 7 Sins demonic zither was strong and was comparable to a magic treasure. But Tian's current state meant that he couldn't unleash the full power of the zither. Just by playing the zither, he could only unleash half of its power. Bang! Tian was shocked. Although he had fought core formation cultivators face to face before, back in the Southern Barbarian, it took several monster beast kings working together to kill a late core formation cultivator. In the Zither realm, he killed Shweta. Although Shweta was known as a core formation cultivator, he didn't have the true strength of a core formation cultivator. Not to mention, Tian back then was an existence that surpassed common sense. Now, he was facing a core formation cultivator alone. Only now did he truly understand the terror of a core formation cultivator. It was indeed very strong. While his eyes were filled with shock, the sound wave domain was crushed 9 times in a row. A blood river emitted a strong and mysterious aura, and like a terrifying beast, it rolled towards Tian. An aura of death suddenly enveloped his body. No, I won't die, and I can't die. Looking at the blood river in front of him, he had already seen the terror of the blood river. How could he not know that if he was swept up by it, Even with his monster beast body, it would be difficult to resist. He would be completely swallowed by the blood river, and not even his bones would be left. It was simply terrifying. At this moment of life and death, a strong obsession flashed through his mind. He didn't want to die, and he couldn't die. Everything that had happened in his previous life flashed through his mind in a flash. A strong desire to live, a desire to control his own life and not the heavens, grew wildly in his body. He looked up to the sky and roared, "Other than myself, no one has the right to take away my life. My life belongs to me, not the heavens. In the heavens and on the earth, only I am worthy." The roar soared into the sky, straight into the clouds. In an instant, it frantically spread out in all directions. Not to mention the entire imperial capital. Even the Zither Music Valley could clearly hear this earth-shattering roar. This was a hysterical roar. The roar was filled with a terrifying aura of supremacy. And just as this roar was filled with that unique aura of supremacy that erupted from his body, a change that he had never expected finally happened. The purple king mark on his forehead emitted a myriad of purple light. In the light, the king mark seemed to have completely turned into a violent purple flame. This purple flame was wildly pulsating, filled with endless majesty, and enveloped Shirtion. On the spot, his body seemed to have become incomparably tall in an instant. It was as if, in this world, he was the only one, and everyone had to submit at his feet. No power was allowed to provoke him. Those who provoked him would definitely be destroyed. The supreme majesty seemed to be able to topple mountains and overturn seas, surging out. In an instant, all the creatures in the surroundings were suppressed by this majesty to the point that they couldn't even breathe, as if they were going to be completely suffocated. At this moment, even Wan Tao had the illusion that his breathing was not smooth. How can this be? Shirtion is clearly a foundation establishment cultivator. How can he emit such an aura? This is impossible. How is that possible? Wan Tao found it hard to accept the change in front of him. He couldn't imagine that a person who was clearly weaker than him could emit a terrifying aura that even he couldn't resist. Terrifying, mysterious, and terrifying. Blood river, devour him. Wan Tao's eyes flashed with a trace of madness. He had a premonition that something terrifying was about to happen. Without even thinking, he directed the blood river to swallow Shirtion whole. Boom, boom, boom. Sakura stood at his original spot, but he was like a Buddha looking down on the world. The king mark on his forehead emitted thousands of purple rays that seemed to have substance. The king mark was constantly pulsating, its speed getting faster and faster. I would like to ask everyone for a few tickets. While reading, I hope you can casually throw a few tickets. Show your support. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 182. Whoosh! Thousands of rays of purple light shot out from the purple king mark. The purple light filled the entire space in front of him. At the same time, a change that surprised even Shirtion himself happened. Because at this moment, he could clearly feel that there was an unprecedented change in the purple pool in the king mark on his forehead. He quickly immersed his consciousness into the king mark. He carefully swept his gaze over it, and his heart was filled with surprise and anticipation. He saw that in the large purple pool, there were many figures wrapped in purple light. These figures were all souls that he had absorbed. Among these souls, most were human souls. Of course, there was no lack of animal souls, but there were very few of them. In total, there were about 1,000 or 2,000 souls. When these souls entered the purple pool, it was as if they were controlled by a mysterious power. Each and every one of them continuously absorbed the mysterious power of the purple pool. Their bodies were covered with a layer of purple light. This purple light entered the souls bit by bit, causing the color of the souls to gradually turn purple. This process seemed to be very long. Only two of the souls completely turned purple. The rest were only partially purple. As time passed, it could be foreseen that in the future, their entire bodies would be completely purple. Furthermore, on the surface of their bodies, the purple light also mysteriously formed battle armors. These battle armors were quite illusory and looked like illusions. It was very strange. In their hands, they all held very different weapons. There were blades, spears, and all kinds of weapons. They could all be seen clearly. Overall, they looked very valiant. At this time, the originally calm, purple pool began to violently churn. All of the souls in the purple pool opened their eyes at the same time. In their eyes, a bright purple light shot out and revealed a cold expression. A strange passage appeared in the sky above the purple pool. Roar! All of the souls let out roars. The two souls that had completely turned purple were the first to start. Their bodies rushed out of the purple pool and into the purple passage. The rest followed one after another. Die! You can't escape from my blood river. Even a late core formation stage expert would have to avoid my blood river. No matter how strong you are, you won't be strong enough to have the strength of a nascent soul stage expert. Feeling the supreme pressure that was being emitted from Sakura's body, Wan Tao was struggling to hold on. He also desperately urged the blood river to roll towards him. As long as he was swept into the blood sea, all of this would be over. However, when the blood river was less than a meter away from Dishurtian, an unforeseen event finally happened. In the purple light that shot out from Dishurtian's forehead, two burly purple figures wearing strange, illusory battle armor appeared. One held a blade, and the other a battle sword. They mysteriously gathered in front of them. The eyes of the fighting soul holding the saber were cold. A purple light shot out from his eyes as he looked at the blood-red river that was rushing towards him. He suddenly raised the saber in his hand and hacked down at the blood river without any trace of politeness. A 10-feet-long saber light burst out from the saber and heavily chopped at the blood river. Bang! The power of this slash was in no way inferior to the full-powered attack of a late Foundation establishment expert. Furthermore, the attack from the battle blade was rather condensed. It actually caused the river of blood to tremble violently. Waves of blood surged and roared continuously, as if it was about to be destroyed. The other battle soul raised the battle sword in his hand high up and also slashed at the river of blood. This attack was like the straw that broke the camel's back. It cut the blood river into two halves. The war soul's attack was terrifying. Good. So this was the true power of my innate divine ability. Helping the tiger do evil, the chi ghosts turned into battle souls, and the battle souls were under my control. With hundreds and thousands of battle souls surging forward, I was invincible. Who can stop me? Sakura couldn't help but be ecstatic in his heart. Finally, at this critical juncture, his own innate divine ability finally showed some movement and displayed a small portion of its power. However, he also felt that this was not the full power of his divine gift. What is this? Are they puppets? Wan Tao was taken aback by the sudden appearance of the fighting souls. The two fighting souls had defeated the Blood River with just one attack. Their casual attack was comparable to that of a Foundation Establishment Realm late-stage cultivator. Dishurtian, do you think that these two puppets, which are equivalent to late Foundation Establishment stage experts, can stop me? My Blood River is not something that you can easily destroy. Today, I will take your life. Condense. Wan Tao pretended to be disdainful. He formed a seal with his hands. Suddenly, the Blood River, which had been cut in two, mysteriously gathered together again. It roared and rushed towards Dishurtian. Kill! At this time, Dishurtian did not speak any nonsense and ordered the battle souls. Suddenly, the two battle souls immediately waved the battle blades in their hands. One rushed towards Shuehe, and the other waved the battle blade and chopped down towards Wan Tao. The blade light was like a piece of cloth and was incomparably vast. As the swords slashed down, a fierce, murderous aura swept out. As a core formation expert, Wan Tao had quite a few magic tools and treasures in his possession. A pair of blood hooks transformed into a river of blood, and a blood banner appeared in his hand. Clouds of blood billowed out of the banner, condensing into hundreds of swords and sabers that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. This was a blood cloud banner. It seemed to be even more powerful than the one in Shui Ini's hands. In one move, the war souls were entangled in countless attacks. You are just two Foundation establishment stage experts. Today, I will tell you that the gap between our realms is not something that can be made up with numbers. I am in the core formation stage, and you are in the Foundation establishment stage. Therefore, you should obediently accept your death. Wan Tao said coldly. To be honest, he was a little surprised by the current situation. At first, he thought that would be a piece of cake for him to capture a mere Foundation establishment cultivator with his own abilities. Who would have thought that such a turn of events would occur? Is that so? Di Shitian's face revealed the same mocking expression as he asked in return. F***CK. Even though Wan Tao was a core formation stage cultivator, he could not help but curse when he saw the changes in front of him. His eyes widened so much that they almost popped out of their sockets. As the royal mark on Di Shitian's forehead continued to emit purple light, the war souls flickered with purple light and quickly condensed into bodies. 1-2. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of war souls appeared around Di Shitian. These war souls all had the same aura. Furthermore, their numbers continued to increase. With every breath, there would be hundreds more. All of them stared coldly at Wan Tao. Where did this evildoer come from? Do you want me to live? Wan Tao cursed loudly. With a wave of his hand, the blood river turned into two blood hooks and returned to his hand. He held the blood cloud banner in one hand and stepped on the blood hooks under his feet. He left behind a trail of resplendent blood light in the air. Without any hesitation, he turned around and quickly fled into the distance. As he fled, he cursed in his heart. Where did this evildoer come from? He was not afraid of one or two war souls. However, if there were hundreds or thousands of them, even a nascent soul stage cultivator would have to flee, let alone him. His heart was filled with boundless fear in an instant. Thinking of the hordes of war souls, Wan Tao's heart beat wildly. The blood light under his feet flew even faster. He desperately fled from this place. Unexpectedly, Di Shitian did not let these war souls chase after him. Instead, he let out a sigh of relief. With a thought, all the war souls turned into rays of purple light at the same time. Like rivers flowing into the sea, they quickly rushed into the king pattern. In the purple pool, they turned back into war souls and continued to absorb the power of the purple pool. Di Shitian did not stay for a moment. His feet were like the wind, and he quickly rushed toward the location of the Guqin Valley. He swept out at the fastest speed in his life. Not long after he left, two figures appeared in the sky above the place where the battle had just taken place. One was dressed in white, and the other was bold and unparalleled. Shui Wuhan gently stroked his folding fan and said, "Just now, there were people fighting here. Furthermore, one of them was definitely Sakura. His tiger's roar sound attack was heard by all of us in the Zither domain. Well, it seems that someone fought with Brother D here. However, it seems that there were no casualties. The remnant aura here is very strong." Wu Wudi quickly scanned the surroundings and said in a low voice. The two of them had rushed over after hearing Di Shitian's powerful tiger roar. They did not expect that they would not be able to make it to the final battle. When they arrived, they could only see the empty battlefield. "Let's go. I believe that Brother D should be fine. Tomorrow, I will send Xiao Lan to the Guqin Valley to take a look." Shui Wuhan nodded. This battle could be said to have caused a great commotion. That tiger roar was even more shocking. It was likely that it had alarmed many cultivators. There would definitely be more people coming later. Not wanting to stay any longer, they turned and flew back to the imperial capital. Sure enough, after they left, several groups of people rushed over from other places. When they saw the surrounding scene, they could only secretly guess who had fought here. The destruction caused was truly terrifying. Whoosh! In less than a quarter of an hour, Tion returned to the bamboo house in the purple bamboo forest. He sat on the bed and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. That was close. This time, I almost died in the hands of the Blood Cloud clan. Fortunately, my innate ability was able to unleash its might at this critical juncture and even managed to scare that core formation cultivator into submission. Otherwise, I would have really fallen here. Although he had returned to the Guqin Valley, there was still a lingering sense of fear in his heart. Being able to escape danger this time was really a stroke of luck. However, it was luck. It was luck. Wan Tao was indeed the most powerful enemy he had faced alone. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 183. It had to be said that there was a great deal of luck involved in his escape this time. This time, the display of his innate divine ability had indeed turned the tide of the battle. However, to be honest, there were only 2 fighting souls that had strong combat abilities, and they were the 2 fighting souls that had turned completely purple. They had powerful combat abilities that were comparable to that of a late Foundation establishment stage cultivator. However, other than them, the other fighting souls all looked like gold and jade, but they had no strength. They could only be used as decorations. They had no battle capabilities at all. Don't look at the number of battle souls. If Wan Tao really tried to attack them, he would discover that the ones that appeared later were all good-looking but useless. Therefore, he was able to escape unscathed this time because of the element of luck. Shuaini, Blood Cloud Clan. It seems that this Blood Cloud clan should be a rather large clan. They could even send core formation cultivators to kill me. If it were the experts above, they would be nascent soul old monsters. Tion calmed his mind and immediately began to ponder. He analyzed the incident in detail. According to his analysis, it seemed that the people of the Blood Cloud clan did not dare to brazenly enter the Zither Melody Valley to cause trouble. Otherwise, they would not have dared to take action when he left the Zither Melody Valley. This meant that the Zither clan was definitely not as simple as it appeared on the surface. He was afraid that what he had seen all along was only the surface. The power that was truly hidden was definitely quite shocking. It seems that as long as I don't leave the valley, no matter how strong the Blood Cloud clan is, they would not dare to charge into the valley. Just as well. During this time, I can also calm down and focus on learning the Zither. After I finish learning the Zither, I will be able to unleash the full power of the 7 Sins demonic Zither. Even if it's a core formation cultivator, I will still dare to fight. At least, I won't be in such a sorry state like today. He secretly made up his mind to never leave the valley before he finished learning the Zither. In any case, he came here to learn the Zither anyway. If he stayed here, he could learn the Zither and cultivate at the same time. At the same time, he could think of a way to resolve the hidden danger in his body. The hidden danger caused by the Sorrow Meridian was only temporarily suppressed. It had not been completely eliminated. He also needed to think of a way to resolve it in the shortest time possible. Otherwise, it would be a huge problem in the end, and it would most likely affect the subsequent meridian sculpting. Therefore, no matter what, resolving the hidden danger was an urgent matter that could not be ignored. All kinds of problems were piling up on him, and he didn't have the time to sort them out. During this period of time, he did not plan to go anywhere. He planned to stay in the valley and focus on solving all the problems in his body. At that time, perhaps his overall strength would be greatly improved. Tion sat cross-legged on the bed after contemplating for a while and making some plans for the future. Closing his eyes, his consciousness quickly entered the purple king mark on his forehead. This time, the eruption of the royal mark had caused people to feel a great deal of interest in their innate divine abilities. They were able to see the power of their divine abilities even more clearly. Right now, there were only 2 war souls, and they were not inferior to any Foundation establishment cultivator. They were almost as strong as core formation cultivators. When the other war souls all turned purple, Wouldn't that mean that as long as he willed it, he could summon thousands of powerful war souls to charge and break through enemy lines for him? When facing an enemy, he could simply gang up on them. Thinking about it, if a person who was on par with him suddenly released thousands of terrifying war souls, how shocking would that scene be? Perhaps those with a slightly weaker mentality would collapse on the spot. One person could resist an army of thousands of men and horses. This innate divine ability was completely a great weapon that could turn the situation around. The strength of this ability almost made Tion want to completely master it. He quickly immersed himself in the royal mark. Inside the royal mark, a green zither was emitting traces of green light. The thousands of war souls were still lifelessly staying in the purple pool. Tion tried to use his consciousness to control the war souls. However, to his disappointment, for some reason, it seemed that the crisis had been resolved. These war souls were just like before, unable to be controlled at all. Each and every one of them just stayed in the purple pool, absorbing the mysterious power of the purple pool. It was almost exactly the same as before. There was no longer the strong sense of control from before. As expected, there are no shortcuts in this world. Previously, I was able to use the power of the royal mark because I suddenly activated the power of the royal mark at the critical moment of life and death. However, when will I be able to truly grasp the full power of the King Rune? Sakura couldn't help but feel a sense of disappointment in his heart. After all, to be unable to truly grasp such a powerful ability was an indescribable torment to anyone. Bitterness was unavoidable. However, he also guessed that with his current strength, he simply couldn't open it. Forget it. If I really encounter danger, the royal mark will definitely be activated. Even if it can't be used as my strongest ability, it can still be used as a trump card to turn the tables in a life and death situation. He thought to himself and tried many methods, but to no avail. He could only put aside for the time being and silently began to channel the demonic chi. He drew the demonic chi out of the demonic mansion and circulated it around his body, using the demonic chi to nourish his physical body. As he circulated his demon yuan, another strange thing happened to him. He discovered that after forming the grief meridian, when he circulated his cultivation method to absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth and the essence of the sun and moon, the grief meridian that was filled with the 7 emotions and 6 desires was absorbed into his body. It circulated through the grief meridian and turned into a strange gray grief meridian. This power was different from the demonic origin energy. It was a new kind of power. The power of sorrow flowed through the meridians into the demon palace and into the demon refining furnace. It didn't fuse with the demonic origin energy. Instead, it mysteriously formed a gray gas above the demonic origin energy. This was the aura of sorrow that contained the power of sorrow. After careful inspection, another thing that made Tion smile bitterly appeared before his eyes. This grief meridian seemed to be able to be absorbed into his body, but strangely, he couldn't control it at all. When the grief meridian entered the demon refining cauldron, it did its own thing and didn't move, as if it was only going in and not coming out. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Now, even Tion himself was a little confused. Was it right or wrong to form the grief meridian? Before forming it, he wanted to use it to absorb the desire meridian. Yes, he had reached the point where he could absorb the desire meridian, but the key was that he could only absorb it and not use it. If he couldn't use it now, then so be it. Tion could only hope that he could find a way to solve it in the future. Slowly, his mind calmed down, and he gradually immersed himself in cultivation. As he inhaled and exhaled, it became quite rhythmic with a strange rhythm. At this time, it was night. Although the sky was covered by dark clouds, the moonlight was only covered. The essence of the moonlight was still sprinkled on everything in the world as usual. Spots of silver-white light, like fireflies, gathered around Tion from all directions. At the same time, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth and the desire meridian, 3 kinds of power, poured into his body through the pores and meridians of his body. As the cultivation method operated in his body, it was refined. The scene of absorbing the essence of the sun and the moon naturally couldn't escape the attention of the Qin family. It should be known that ordinary immortal cultivators absorb the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, which contain the power of the 5 elements. After all, the spiritual roots in the human body were mostly of the 5 elements. It wasn't that the essence of the sun and the moon couldn't be absorbed, but such cultivation methods were not only rare, but each one was a supreme treasure. Moreover, the conditions required to cultivate it were even harsher. Now, the essence of the sun and the moon was gathering in Di Shitian's bamboo house. How could it not attract the attention of the Qin family? As I expected, Di Shitian is definitely not an ordinary person. I remember that only the zombie record of the corpse refining sect and the Jade Girl Heart Sutra of the Xianyu sect, which is composed of women, can absorb the essence of the moon. There are many others, but each of such cultivation methods is extremely precious and is a treasure of the sect. I don't know which one he has learned. Qin Xian thought to himself, Di Shitian, what kind of person are you? Why do I have a feeling of wanting to get close to you when I see you? This is something I have never felt before. In a pavilion, Katomi also looked in the direction of Di Shitian's residence, muttering to herself. She looked a little lost in thought. She was a little absent-minded. Indeed, there seemed to be quite a number of people who could not sleep tonight. Even Wan Tao, after escaping back to the small valley, had a gloomy face. His eyes were filled with bewilderment, and he was secretly worried. The scene of Sakura summoning hundreds and thousands of fighting souls had really frightened him, and he was so frightened that he could not think clearly. Thinking about it now, he had an impulse to run away. He had been cursing in his heart. How could there be such a monster in this world? A person who was obviously in the foundation stage could summon so many strange things. He was simply a monster. No matter how much he thought about it, time would never stop for anyone. It was always moving forward. A night, for immortal cultivators, couldn't be any shorter. It would pass by in a few minutes. In the blink of an eye, the dark clouds in the sky dissipated. In the early morning, golden rays of sunlight sprinkled down and fell on everything in the world, looking very sacred. A wisp of purple chi came from the east. Big Brother D, are you inside? Katomi has come to teach you the zither. Just as the sun rose, a clear and melodious voice sounded outside the bamboo house. It gave people a very comfortable feeling when it reached their ears. Phew! Di Shitian exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and quickly transferred the demon chi in his body into the demon mansion. He opened his eyes, and a faint light flashed in his eyes. However, it disappeared in the blink of an eye. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 184. After a night of quiet cultivation, his previous injuries had been completely healed by his powerful demonic body. His demonic essence, chi, and spirit had all been restored to their peak state. He got off the bed, tidied up his appearance, and walked towards the door at a leisurely pace. However, he was secretly surprised. He didn't expect that the person sent by the Qin clan to teach him would be Katomi. Creak! The tightly shut bamboo door opened with a soft sound. Sakura walked out of the bamboo house and looked outside. A beautiful figure was standing in the bamboo forest. She was wearing a plain white female dress, which was especially matching. The elegant temperament on her body was as if it was made by heaven. There was a layer of white veil covering her face, making it impossible to see her face. However, from other parts of her body, it could be seen that her appearance was definitely not ordinary. So, it was Miss Katomi. I didn't expect that you would be the one to teach me the zither. If there is any neglect, please don't blame me. Di Shitian looked at Katomi with clear eyes. He wasn't like ordinary cultivators who would flatter and fawn over her. He didn't ask for help. He learned the zither, using treasures in exchange for opportunities. They were only trading and didn't ask for anything. They didn't owe each other anything. Even when facing Katomi, he didn't feel any psychological burden. In terms of beauty, Baihu in the myriad Demon Valley was a cut above her. Therefore, he was able to treat her with a kind of calmness that ordinary people didn't have. This kind of special treatment caused Katomi's eyes to flash with a strange light. She softly said, "The morning of a day is the most peaceful. Everything is awakened and the sun has just risen. It is the best time to learn the zither. My Qin clan received your gift, so we naturally have to be responsible for teaching you. In this generation of the Qin clan, Katomi just so happens to be learning the zither. Therefore, I volunteered to teach Brother D the zither. You don't tell me you don't welcome me?" Her eyes blinked as if they could speak. "Of course not. It is my blessing that Miss Qin can teach me in person. There is no reason for me not to welcome you." Di Shirtian nodded. A light flashed in his hand, and a dark purple 7-stringed zither appeared. This zither was obtained in the zither realm. Although it was still a prototype, it was definitely not a problem to play it. The 7 Sins demonic zither was his life-bound instrument. It was of the highest grade, comparable to a magic treasure. As the saying goes, one shouldn't show one's wealth. If he took it out, it was hard to guarantee that no one wouldn't discover its peculiarity. Therefore, Di Shirtian didn't take out the 7 Sins demonic zither, but an ordinary zither. Qin glanced at the guqin he took out and smiled. She nodded and said, "If that's the case, we don't need to be so polite. We still need to spend a lot of time together in the future. It's too cold to call you like this. In the future, I will call you Big Brother D, and you can call me Little Sister Qin. All right." There was no need to pay too much attention to these small details. Di Shirtian already knew that if he wanted to learn the zither, he naturally couldn't do it in the house. Therefore, a small bamboo pavilion was built in front of the bamboo building. It was just the right place to teach the zither. The two entered the pavilion and sat down. Katomi's zither was also placed on the table. It was a 7-stringed zither made of sycamore wood. Looking at its quality, it was also a supreme grade instrument. It was extraordinary. Katomi took out the zither. It seemed that she didn't intend to teach the zither at the beginning. Instead, she opened her beautiful eyes and fell on Di Shirtian. Her red lips slightly opened, and she said, "The zither is a musical instrument. There are many kinds of musical instruments, such as flutes, pipa, eru, and so on. Only the zither is the most well-known in the world. In the ancient books, there are words zither, chess, calligraphy, painting, and painting. The zither is ranked at the top and is regarded as the most cultivated of the 6 arts." Katomi saw that Big Brother D was actually willing to give up 10 embryos that could be said to be rare treasures in the cultivation world just to learn the zither in the secular world. "I'm quite curious, so I dare to ask Big Brother D a question. In Big Brother D's heart, what is the zither?" After saying that, a pair of clear eyes quietly looked at Di Shirtian. Speaking of the zither, in his previous life, it could be said that it was the most precious treasure of China since ancient times. In ancient history, the zither had never disappeared. It was almost a button that ran through countless thoughts. Di Shirtian's eyes flashed with an inexplicable look. There was a faint trace of nostalgia, but also seemed to have fallen into a kind of reverie. After a long time, he met Katomi's gaze without dodging and said in a deep voice, "The zither is the heart of the heart." Di Shirtian had once read a record in his previous life, which left a deep impression on him. The evaluation of the zither was extremely high. It said, "The zither has witnessed the rise and fall of the Chinese nation. It reflects the serene and quiet, free and easy thoughts of the descendants of China. The ideals of Ancestor good were often expressed through the zither. Fuxi, Shinnong, the Yellow Emperor, Yushun, and the others all had legends of creating zither. Moreover, it was very widespread in the zither world. Confucius, Zhuangzi, and the others were also zither masters. The ideal realm in their minds was vividly expressed in the ancient zither culture. During the spring and autumn warring states period, it could be said that there were 100 schools of thought contending. It was the most intense era of all kinds of thoughts in China. The main activities on the ideological stage were Taoism, Confucianism, Moism, legalism, school of thought, 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 and school of thought. There were differences between each family's doctrines, but the thoughts of the 9 great clans had always coexisted in the minds of China's people, becoming a major feature of China's culture. This was because the people of China knew the commonality of all kinds of thoughts, free and easy, and the world was peaceful. The expression of one's inner voice was the strength of the zither. Even though the various clans all had different ideas, they all had a special fondness for the zither. The zither was the embodiment of the essence of the various schools of thought. It was the sound of tranquility, serenity, and carefreeness from the depths of the human heart. That was why people said that the Guqin was the representative of Huaxia culture. The sound of the Guqin was the inner voice. Even though Di Shitian had not experienced such an era, he could imagine the supreme realm of the Guqin. The Guqin could be said to be the first musical instrument in the world. That was why when he saw the divine song in the ancient scroll, he did not hesitate to shape his natal demon artifact into a Guqin. The Guqin was the inner voice, and his heart was the sound of the Guqin. Big Brother D is indeed a person who loves the Guqin. The sound of the Guqin is the inner voice. Well said. Katomi's eyes lit up. The purple gold continent was not the same as China. However, the Guqin was the first musical instrument, and it was the first musical instrument that appeared. Di Shitian's words had undoubtedly revealed the true meaning of the Guqin. I'm just a person who doesn't know anything about music. What I said was just some superficial understanding. Di Shitian's expression was indifferent. He had no intention of claiming credit. One morning, Qin Xin didn't immediately teach the Guqin. She only talked about the history of the Guqin, its illusion, and some music theory matters. After all, Di Shitian was only a beginner. It could be said that he didn't know anything. Everything needed to be learned from the beginning. Learning the temperament, learning how to read the Guqin score, reading the music score, what each string on the Guqin represented, whether the sound produced was high or low, and what the rhythm was, and so on. What she taught was only the theory. She did not say anything about the technique. It was not that she did not want to teach him, but that he had to follow the order step by step. Little by little, he understood the essentials. It was like a child learning how to walk. Learning music theory and the basics first was like walking step by step. If he suddenly learned the technique, it was undoubtedly like learning how to run without even knowing how to walk. It would be strange if he did not fall. What was even more frightening was that he would not even be able to distinguish what was being said. With Di Shitian's willpower, he naturally understood this principle. Therefore, he was not in a hurry at all. Anyway, he had plenty of time in the valley. His plan was to use 1 to 2 years to learn the Guqin. Therefore, there was no need to worry about time at all. With his brain, he could naturally clearly understand and absorb these basics, turn them into his own things. He really knew how to. He really understood. One taught seriously, the other learned seriously. Time passed quietly without them noticing. Katomi only taught for 2 to 4 hours in the morning every day. The rest of the time, she let Di Shitian do other things by himself. In any case, Di Shitian had finally taken the first step on the path of learning the Guqin. In a mansion in the imperial capital, Hua Wenwu was staying in the study with a girl. Hua Wenwu's face was full of excitement. He seemed to be unable to control himself and kept pacing back and forth in the study. He couldn't help but exclaim, "That's great! Mr. D is indeed Mr. D." He just agreed to help during the day, and, at night, he destroyed the Hall of Consecrators with his own hands. The 6 consecrators all died without a trace. "Hua Qing, oh Hua Qing, my good brother, the Hall of Offerings is gone. I'll see what tricks you can play. If you want to fight for the throne, I'll break your claws." His eyes were shining. He seemed to be unable to suppress his excitement. On his face, there was a kind of high-spirited momentum. There was a faint sense of sharpness. The news of the destruction of the Hall of Offerings in the imperial capital had already reached his ears early in the morning. At that time, the first thought that came to his mind was that Mr. D had done it. He had a more straightforward understanding of Di Shirtian's strength in his heart. Thinking of the devil-like figure, he had a kind of awe. As for Di Shirtian's request for a totem, he did not dare to have the slightest objection. He only thought that as soon as he ascended the throne, he would do a good job and firmly hold on to Mr. D's thigh. Wenwu, exactly where did you find this, Mr. D? The consecration hall is actually so weak in his hands. The girl was full of surprise. After knowing that it was her brother who hired someone to do it, she had not stopped being surprised in her heart. In the past, she had heard from Hua Wenwu that there was a way to deal with the Hall of Offerings, but she did not expect that this method would be so direct and so domineering. Vaguely, she was curious about Mr. D, who was standing behind her brother. Royal sister, it's not convenient for me to say more about Mr. D. You only need to know that he is an extraordinary person. You must not offend him. Hua Wenwu took a deep breath, and his face became calm. He said, Father's health has been getting worse recently. I've asked the imperial physician. I'm afraid that he can't hold on for more than a few months. My good brother, without the Hall of Offerings, has no capital to compete with me. If nothing unexpected happens, the throne will be mine. However, to prevent any movements from the other two countries when Father dies, I'll have to ask you to mobilize your Sky Phoenix army to the border, just in case. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 185. Don't worry, Wenwu. I've already thought of this. The Sky Phoenix army is probably at the border now. If anyone wants to take advantage of us, I don't mind killing them. The girl raised her eyebrows, revealing a heroic spirit and a murderous aura. It was obvious that she was not a flower that grew up in a greenhouse. With Royal Sister by my side, I'm relieved, Hua Wenwu said happily. He looked at the void, his eyes full of determination. He clenched his fists. Everything was for the sake of ascending to the throne. He had an ambition in his heart. If he could get Mr. D's support, perhaps he could become the first emperor to unite the three countries in the Eastern land. What kind of glory would that be? What kind of great achievement would it be? It would be recorded in the annals of history. As for all this, he only had to pay the price of totem. No matter how he looked at it, this price was worth it. If he knew that Hua Wenwu had such an ambition, Di Shirtian would not have stopped him. Instead, he would have helped him without hesitation. As long as China's territory was bigger and there were more people, he would get more power of faith. Why not? It seemed that Di Shirtian's totem plan was about to succeed. Now, outside the Guqin Valley, Wan Tao, who had been thinking for a long time, felt that there was something wrong with the attack that night. It seemed that he had overlooked something. However, when he thought about it carefully, he could not figure out what was wrong. This made him feel anxious and doubtful. Hey, I remember now. The puppets that Sakura released before and after seemed to be somewhat different. One was completely purple, and the other wasn't completely purple. Could it be that there's something different inside? Could it be that the later ones didn't have the same strength as the two at the beginning? A thought flashed through Wan Tao's mind. It seemed that the fighting souls that appeared later were very different from the ones that had appeared earlier. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was amiss. However, when he thought about the thousands of fighting souls that were densely packed together, he could not help but feel extremely fearful. That situation was truly too terrifying. Now, the best way to verify his thoughts was to find Di Shirtian and fight him again. However, when he thought of the situation, he felt a little hesitant. That night had left a deep impression on him. Just thinking about it made his hair stand on end. His expression kept changing, and the light in his eyes flickered. After pondering for a long time, he finally said to himself, "Forget it. Anyway, Di Shirtian is already hiding in the Zither Melody Valley. I might as well send a message back to Master and see if there are any other ways before making a decision." After making up his mind, he quickly took out a small blood-red sword and imprinted his divine sense on it. Then, the blood-red sword quickly flew away. In the blink of an eye, it had disappeared without a trace. It was extremely fast. Time continued to pass in this silence. To immortal cultivators, time was cheap, but it was also very important. However, time would not stop for anyone or anything. It continued to move forward silently. Flowers bloomed and wilted. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. In these 3 months, Tion had been quietly staying in the valley. He did not go out most of the time. Most of the time, he was seizing every minute to accumulate his demonic chi, the chi of heaven and earth, and the essence of the sun and the moon. He was constantly refining the bodies in the demon refining cauldron. Thousands of corpses were being refined one by one. Forming the first demonic vein meant that his cultivation would enter a period of rapid growth. The barrier to the growth of his demonic chi was completely gone. It could be said that his demonic chi was increasing almost every day. The height of the demonic chi in the cauldron was slowly rising. For a long time, there were too few times where he could cultivate in peace. Tion knew that although he had reached this stage by chance, in the eyes of the real experts, he was still like an ant. Although he did not want to think this way, it was the truth. There was no need to deny it. This kind of pressure, this kind of invisible pressure, forced him to seize every inch of time to cultivate. At the same time, he was secretly experimenting to see if he could use the power of the verdant jade zither to eliminate the hidden danger in his body. What was disappointing was that the verdant jade zither was only suppressing it. The power inside was not under his control at all. There was no progress. It was worth mentioning that in these 3 months, he had grasped the various fundamentals of music. How to read the music score, what each note represented, what the strings on the zither were, what the notes were, what they meant, what the strings on the zither were, and what the notes were. During this time, he was like a dry sponge, desperately absorbing all the nutrients. Every bit of knowledge that he heard, he carefully considered, pondered, and thoroughly understood. With Tian's intelligence, which was not inferior to any genius, learning these things was easy for him. He opened his eyes and looked at the sky. Darkness was gradually replacing the day. Night had arrived, and the moon hung high in the sky. Outside, birds and insects were chirping. Moonlight sprinkled down and fell into the bamboo forest, creating a poetic and picturesque scene. It was a distant mood. In Tian's eyes, there was a faint trace of anticipation. After 3 months of building the foundation, he had learned all the theoretical knowledge of music. This morning, Katomi had finally said that starting tomorrow, she would officially teach him various skills. In other words, starting tomorrow, he would officially start learning the zither. Big Brother D. A familiar call came from outside the door. Hearing this call, Tian's body could not help but tremble slightly, and a trace of hesitation appeared between his brows. However, he still walked downstairs, opened the door, and saw Katomi standing in the pavilion. In the pavilion, there were some simple dishes and wine. Seeing Tian come out, Katomi seemed to be very happy and said softly, "Big Brother D, during this period of time, you have finished learning the basics. Tomorrow, you will officially start learning the zither. Katomi specially prepared a few dishes to celebrate with you." "Thank you." Tian hesitated for a moment, but still walked into the pavilion. The two of them sat down, facing each other. Qin reached out her jade-like hand and picked up the wine jug, pouring a cup for Sakura. The wine in the cup was dark green in color, and waves of strange wine fragrance constantly permeated the air. Just by smelling it, one would have the urge to drink it. It was very attractive. "This is a century-old wine that my father treasured. Try it and see how it tastes. Usually, even my father could not bear to drink much of it. He kept it like a treasure. These few dishes were also made by me." Katomi glanced at Tian and greeted him softly. There seemed to be an inexplicable look in her eyes when she looked at him. "Thank you, Miss Katomi." Tian seemed to avoid her gaze. He picked up the wine cup in front of him and poured it into his mouth. As soon as the wine entered his mouth, there was a warm feeling in his heart. It flowed down his throat and all the way to his stomach. Then a wonderful taste emerged. In his heart, there seemed to be a wonderful feeling emerging. The strong wine rushed to his head like a stream of air, and all the pores on his body seemed to open in an instant. An indescribable comfort surged in his heart. His whole person felt like he was floating in the air. Good wine. Chertion tasted it for a long time and could not help but spit out 2 words. His praise could be said to be from the bottom of his heart. The taste of this wine was not inferior to the monkey wine at all. It was really wonderful. When Katomi heard it, there seemed to be a smile on her face under the white veil. She took out a zither and put her jade hands on it. She smiled and said, "Good wine also needs to be accompanied by music. It just so happens that Big Brother D will start learning the zither tomorrow. Today, Katomi will play a song for you alone to taste." Okay. When Sakura heard this, he couldn't help but nod his head and said, "When I was in China, I heard people say that Zither Fairy's zither skills had already reached perfection. When the zither sounds, even butterflies would dance. Today, I just happened to experience this legendary sound of nature." Thinking of the rumors he heard at that time, his heart couldn't help but faintly look forward to it. One had to know that in these 3 months, Chinshin had never displayed her zither skills. Katomi pursed her lips and smiled. Her jade fingers gently plucked the strings. Ding-dong! The melodious sound of the zither sounded. In this quiet night, it was like an orchid in an empty valley. Moreover, after this sound, Katomi's 10 fingers kept dancing on the zither. The strings were plucked lightly and heavily. The movement of playing the zither was like moving clouds and flowing water. A kind of natural aura flashed from her body. Chertion listened attentively. This song, he did not know what it was, but there was a quiet and serene mood in the sound of the zither. Listening to it, one's mind could not help but become empty with the sound of the zither. Immersed in the sound of the zither was really like the sound of nature. In the mind, a kind of relaxed idea slowly emerged. There was nothing in his mind, and his eyes unconsciously closed. When the sound of the zither sounded in Chertion's body, a strange force slowly surged to his head. Along with the sound of the zither, his eyelids gradually closed. It was as if he was slowly falling asleep in the sound of the zither. However, just as he was about to fall into a silent sleep, a cool and mysterious force suddenly came from the 7 sins demonic zither in the demon abode. It rushed along the demon vein and quickly rushed to his head. The icy aura also swept away his thoughts of drowsiness on the spot. No, the sound of the zither is wrong. The wine is also wrong. Almost instantly, Chertion realized that there was something wrong with the wine that he had just drunk. The strength of the aftereffects was really unimaginable. With his constitution, even if he drank 1,000 cups of ordinary wine, he might not get drunk. However, in silence, the wine rushed to his head, causing him to almost pass out. If one listened carefully, there was a faint hypnotic rhythm in the sound of the zither. When one heard it, the thought of falling into a deep sleep would unconsciously surge forth. Coupled with the wine, even he unknowingly fell for the trick. What is Katomi trying to do? If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 186. Chertion was secretly surprised. If it wasn't for the mysterious power that the 7 sins demonic zither released at the critical moment, he might really have fallen for it. But the strange thing was that he didn't feel any hostility or even killing intent from Katomi. This made him extremely confused. Under the power of the cool aura released by the 7 sins demonic zither, he was able to keep his consciousness clear. However, he also found that although he had just drunk a small cup of wine, the power of the wine still didn't dissipate. Instead, it was constantly spreading into his body. It wanted to rush to his head. If it wasn't for the protection of the mysterious power, he would probably still be intoxicated. However, although he was awake, Deshirtion also wanted to know why Katomi suddenly did such a thing. She actually deliberately used such a method to make him pass out. Therefore, he didn't immediately recover. Instead, he closed his eyes and pretended to be intoxicated. His whole body suddenly fell on the table. Crash! With a crisp sound, the wine cup in his hand fell to the ground and broke into several pieces on the spot. Ding! Katomi's zither sound came to a halt. She put her hand on the zither and looked at Deshirtion, who was lying on the table, with a complicated expression. It was quite difficult to understand. Yes, this time, she did deliberately want Deshirtion to be intoxicated. The wine she brought was not ordinary wine. It was also a kind of spiritual wine. The wine brewed by the people of the secular world could only intoxicate people, so it was called ordinary wine. However, the wine brewed by immortal cultivators with various precious materials was often more delicious and had a unique taste. Moreover, it also had various magical powers and a kind of spiritual energy. The wine that Deshirtion just drank was called drunken immortal wine. The wine was made from the fruits of a legendary wine fruit tree. It was brewed using all sorts of precious ingredients. Not only was the taste unique, but it also left one with a boundless aftertaste. It was as if all the pores on one's body had opened up. It was a wonderful feeling, as if one had returned to their mother's womb. While sleeping, one could be closer to nature. Drinking it once could cleanse one's soul, making it easier to raise one's realm. This was secondary. The most important thing was that it was very strong. It was very shocking. As long as one drank even a small amount, even a person with a high alcohol tolerance would most likely get drunk. According to legend, even immortals would get drunk if they drank it. If a mortal drank it, they could sleep for 1,000 days. Of course, 1,000 days might be an exaggeration, but the effect of this wine was evident. It was because of this that it was called drunken immortal. It was very rare. For some people who loved wine, they just needed to dilute it to have a good taste. It was a precious wine like the monkey wine. It was a kind of spiritual wine. It was said that very few people now, drunken immortal cultivators, drunken immortal wine. It was said it was rare to brew of drunken immortal wine, and it was a kind of wine. The song she had just played was not simple. It was called the Spring Awakening Song, which meant Spring Awakening Song. It meant that spring had just arrived. Playing it could make the listener feel as if the spring breeze was caressing their faces. It could also evoke the desire to fall asleep, just like a lullaby, when paired with drunken immortal wine. How could Deshirtion not fall into the trap? Looking at the sleeping Sakura's appearance wasn't too handsome and could only be said to be slightly above average. His face was like a knife, naturally revealing traces of vicissitudes and indifference, giving people a feeling that he had a story. On the contrary, it set off his unique temperament. If he were to walk on the street, he would probably attract the attention of those young girls. In short, he was very stylish and different from the rest. She quietly looked at Deshirtion. After a long time, she said faintly, "Big brother D, what kind of person are you? I hope you won't blame me when you wake up from your drunken stupor. Katomi has a lot of things to tell you." She couldn't help but blush. In the eyes of outsiders, she was the Chin family's eldest Mississippi. She was the apple of the Chin family's eye. No one disrespected her. She could get whatever she wanted. She should be the happiest person in the world. In fact, there were many things in her heart that she couldn't tell anyone. The Chin family's mission for generations was a shackle that they couldn't break free from. It was very heavy. The more one knew, the more they would feel oppressed and powerless. What was even more tragic was that there were many things that couldn't be told to outsiders. This kind of pressure was in the heart for a few years or more. It was a test of one's heart. Katomi usually stayed in the valley. The people she met were the elders or disciples of the Chin family. She had very little contact with outsiders. Deshirtion's arrival, his unique style, his unique temperament, and the inexplicable vicissitudes of life that seemed to be shrouded in a layer of mysterious fog made people want to know more about him. All of these gave Katomi a novel feeling. This feeling was something that she couldn't experience in the Qin family. That was why she personally took on the task of teaching Di Shurtian the Guqin. She wanted to try to understand him. In these 3 months, they spent day and night together. Katomi unknowingly developed a subtle feeling for Di Shurtian. There was an inexplicable color in her eyes when she looked at him. Big Brother D, I don't know why, but when I first saw you outside the Guqin territory, I had a feeling of wanting to get close to you. That's why I left you in the valley and personally asked Father to let me teach you the Guqin. Katomi's eyes gradually softened. Looking at the sleeping Di Shurtian, she only had the courage to speak the words in her heart under such circumstances. Although you don't know how to play the Guqin, you are very serious about learning it. Looking at how serious you are, I can't help but want to tell you everything I know. Big Brother D, in the past few days, there seems to be something in my heart. I always hope that the morning will pass slowly. When I can't see you, your shadow will always appear in my mind. Katomi seemed to be talking to herself. She revealed her thoughts bit by bit. Her eyes were blurred. I think, like in the story my mother told me, I fell in love with someone. Her face unconsciously turned dark red. An alluring pink appeared on her snow-white neck. Katomi touched her face. There was a restless heat rushing to her face. It was faintly hot. It was undeniable that Di Shurtian did have a unique charm that attracted women unconsciously. Even Di Shurtian did not know that after he absorbed the verdant qilin into his body, the power emitted by the verdant qilin suppressed his sorrow meridian. It also gave him a strange aura. The verdant qilin belonged to the Qin family. No one could use it except those with the Qin family bloodline. Naturally, this aura also made Katomi feel a faint sense of closeness. She wanted to unconsciously open her heart. This almost fatal aura unconsciously attracted Katomi. In addition, in the past 3 months, they spent almost every day together and met often. Katomi, who had never experienced anything, slowly imprinted Di Shurtian's shadow in her heart. The feeling that she had never felt before made Katomi feel an inexplicable fear in her heart. Thinking of Di Shurtian's indifferent temperament, she did not have the courage to tell him. In her anxiety, she finally thought of such a way. She silently poured out the fear and strange feeling in her heart to Di Shurtian, who she thought was in a coma. Who would have known that Sakura wasn't really unconscious, but was still conscious? Hearing the zither heart girl's confession as if she was in love, he couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. She is a human, and I am a demon. In fact, as early as these few days, Di Shurtian had already felt that these days, Qin Shin's gaze towards him contained a kind of inexplicable expression. He was also slightly aware of it, so he had always maintained an indifferent expression. They sat together and only talked about the Guqin, not saying much else. After learning the Qin, he went back to his room to meditate. He did not expect Katomi to really fall in love with him. From Sakura's point of view, he really didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Firstly, he didn't have much thoughts in this aspect. Most of his thoughts were on how to improve his own strength and how to become stronger. Secondly, thinking about his identity, one was a demon and the other was a human. The current demon race and the human race had long been incompatible like fire and water. Under such circumstances, how could he be in the mood to have a passionate love affair with Katomi? During this period, he also saw that Katomi was indeed very kind. She had a good impression of him, but it did not involve feelings. Hearing Qin Shin's words, he couldn't help but feel surprised and bitter. Brother D, many people think that the Qin clan is very noble, but they don't know how much the Qin clan has sacrificed for a mission and for the entire Zijin mainland. As a descendant of the Qin clan, I have an inescapable responsibility since I was born. Or perhaps, Katomi is no longer qualified to have a relationship of her own. Perhaps my feelings are no longer up to me to decide. Katomi used the drunken immortal wine to intoxicate you this time. Actually, I just want to talk to you. Perhaps you will never know. I will bury today in the bottom of my heart forever. I won't let anyone know. As she spoke, there was a faint aura in her voice. As she looked at the incomplete moon in the sky, a faint sadness gradually appeared on her body. Her responsibility to the Qin clan had long deprived her of the right to love. Silently looking at Di Shirtian, she sighed faintly. She got up and walked into the bamboo house. Taking out a blanket, she draped it over Di Shirtian. Carrying her Qin, she walked towards the direction of the manor. Her graceful figure gradually disappeared into the darkness. At this moment, in the Qin clan manor, Qin Xian and Madame Qin were standing in the garden. Their gazes seemed to be looking at the purple bamboo forest. After a long while, a trace of sadness appeared on Madame Qin's face. She sighed. "It's been hard on Ancestor." Qin Xian took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "This has been the mission of the Qin clan's descendants for generations. The Qin clan's ancestor left behind a message that the green silk zither will definitely appear in the next 100 years. However, we're not allowed to search for it. Only outsiders can obtain it through chance. Therefore, this is Ancestor's responsibility." To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.